It's a minute past 6 and a very good morning to you. Welcome to it. This is Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa. We're broadcasting live from Johannesburg in South Africa. That's where our studios are. Of course, you can tune in on www.channelafrica.co.za. On the YouTube live streaming, we are on at Channel Africa 1. That's the page that you can also find us on for our social media networks interactions, and then on the SABC Plus app via mobile phones. And I am Asanda Beda.
Good morning, Asanda Beda.
And we're just waking up to a new tune coming into the show.
Isn't it interesting?
We were confused there for a little bit. We got confused a bit.
No, if you didn't recognize it, it's a brand new tune, a brand new sound, and hopefully familiar voices, but a brand new approach to, especially our website. I don't know if you've visited it yet. Please search around, move around it. It's exciting. These are exciting times that we're living through. My name is Ndoro, by the way, and we'll be taking a look at a couple of things on the program today. One of them, Paul Biya's inauguration. What is the story there? I mean, we saw in Tanzania the president of the country having an inauguration behind closed doors under military lockup, essentially. And the people who voted for her, 97% of the people were not allowed to see it or be there. What's the story in Cameroon with Paul Biya? We'll find out. And then also the State of Food and Agriculture report is out. And we would be unlocking that and trying to figure out what the story is. And I'm sure that that's a story that Asanda would like to do.
Yes, I'm already awake more than normal after you said that. So let's start then with our news update. Here's Onele Nzinzi to give us that. And then Musubudi Makura will follow with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
I thank you, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. Tanzania's elections did not comply with the democratic standards. This is from the African Union's Observer Mission that reported on Wednesday of the disputed votes that triggered deadly protests. President Samia Suluhu Hassan was declared landslide winner of the October 29 vote, but opponents accused the government of fraud, and there were protests over the exclusion of her main challengers. Observers saw ballot stuffing at several polling stations, with people being issued multiple papers to vote, it said, also noting an absence of political party agents. During counting, some observers were asked to leave stations, it has added. Sudan's joint force of armed movements has rejected any political settlement that treats the paramilitary rapid support forces or the RSF as an equal actor of the state. The United Nations has sent a warning of worsening insecurity in Sudan's Kordofan region after 40 people were killed and dozens injured in an attack at a funeral in the capital of North Kordofan. The assault is linked to renewed fighting between the army and the rapid support forces. Tabiso Luhoko reports.
The UN's humanitarian coordinator has called for an immediate halt to the fighting and urged both sides to protect civilians trapped in the conflict. He's appealing for humanitarian corridors to be reopened to allow aid to reach those in need. Thousands have fled attacks in and around Al-Fashir, with overcrowded camps now struggling to cope. UNICEF says nearly 15% of children under 5 are suffering from severe malnutrition. The UN Human Rights Chief, Volker Turk, told the BBC that crimes against humanity have been committed and described the fall of Al-Fashir after an 18-month siege as horrific, urging massive international pressure to prevent more atrocities.
South Africa's Deputy National Police Commissioner General Shadrack Sibiya is among the senior police officers that have been identified to be involved with the criminal cartel. This is according to Crime Intelligence Head General Dumisani Khumalo, who is testifying before the Madlanga Commission. Khumalo says he revealed this information in a meeting with the Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, and the National Police Commissioner General Fanima Semula. Khumalo says that he could not identify the name of the fourth police officer due to investigations being at a critical stage.
Lieutenant General Sibiya, Major General Shibiri, Brigadier Nkwashu, Captain Mahotle, by that time were the names identified.
So these were the names identified by the 16th of January already?
Yes.
Furthermore, South Africa's Police Minister Feroz Kachalia says it is clear that crime intelligence has not been able to self-correct its challenges over the past few years. Kachalia also appeared before Parliament's ad hoc committee looking into matters of national security. It was established after the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's allegations of criminal infiltration, corruption and political interference in the criminal justice system. Kachalia was asked for his views on how organized crime can be tackled effectively.
We're not going to win the battle against organized crime if we don't tackle the problems in crime intelligence, which are about accountability, but also about capability. Why is it these problems in crime intelligence have emerged in all these reports and oversight documents, processes that I've talked, but it's over a period of time it's become worse. We haven't been able to use the system to self-correct.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up with your sports news this hour, CAF announces expansion of the Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament to 16 teams from 2026, while Amanda Asimova joins the undefeated Elena Rybakina in the semi-finals of the WTA. Details coming up at 6:30.
Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Wow. That's lovely music there to take us through to our Africa Roundup. And this is a segment of the show that comes after the 6 a.m. news here on Rise and Shine. If you've just joined us, a good morning to you. So Africa Roundup is where we bring you up to speed with news happening in and around our continent. A list compiled by our team of reporters, of researchers, as well as editors. And as part of that list as well, we look at what could develop in the new day in the news space. And today we start with Namibia. In our Africa Roundup, the country says it's intensifying its push to host the African Regional Hub of the Green Climate Fund as the UN Climate Change Conference gets underway in Belém, Brazil today. President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has confirmed that Namibia has already submitted its bid.
If you look to the Environmental Management Fund, it has really benefited from the Green Climate Fund, and we still want to benefit more because we really have areas, particularly Kunene, that is most hit by the climate change. So going to this conference, we are trying to see how we can benefit ourselves. Another thing is the question of water, which is a challenge. And the climate change and water are discussed together. So that is why Namibia is part of the global water program, partnership program.
The UN Secretary General, personal envoy for Western Sahara, Staffan de Mistura, has described the resolution 2797 as significant, saying that it reflects a renewed international momentum and determination to resolve the decades-long conflict. Adopted by the Security Council last week, the resolution renews the mandate of the UN mission in Western Sahara for another year. It also urges all parties to resume negotiations without preconditions and reaffirms support for a mutually acceptable political solution. De Mistura was speaking to reporters in Brussels, Belgium.
The resolution 2797 was the result of a very proactive engagement of the pen holder through Dr. Masad Boulos and Ambassador Mike Walls and other concerned members of the Council, including perhaps, I could say, even those who abstained or did not vote. Everyone was in one form or the other involved. The resolution 2797, in its very articulated paragraph, does provide, and I stress this word, a framework for negotiations. It does not prescribe an outcome, which will, as always, in order to be sustainable, be the result of negotiations conducted in good faith.
The South African Police Service has confirmed it has received a surrender order from the government of Eswatini for the Ndimande brothers, wanted in connection with several cases, including the murders of rapper Keenan aka Forbes and his friend Tibello Tibbs Mutswane. Police spokesperson Athlinda Mate says logistical arrangements are being finalized to carry out the order next Tuesday.
The National Commission of SAPS, General Fani Masemola, takes this opportunity to thank the Eswatini authorities for their cooperation and assistance in firstly apprehending the pair and ultimately ensuring that they are brought back to the country to answer to crimes committed. The two Ndimande brothers, Siabonga and Malusi Ndimande, abandoned their extradition appeal on Monday, the 3rd of November 2025. The SAPS remains confident that it has a watertight case against the pair, who face 24 charges relating to 3 cases. These include conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, unlawful possession of automatic firearms and ammunition, amongst a host of other charges. Interpol South Africa and Interpol Eswatini are in talks to arrange the handing over of the two wanted brothers.
South Africa's Minister of International Relations, or Foreign Affairs, Ronald Lamola, has congratulated the South African Broadcasting Corporation and its New York-based correspondent, Sherwin Brycepeace, along with video journalist Aaron Berkebeck, after they received the prestigious Ricardo Ortega Memorial Prize. The SABC was named the gold winner for its broadcast coverage of the United Nations agencies and field operations.
Minister Ronald Lamola stated that this distinguished award, conferred by the United Nations Correspondents Association, represents a significant acknowledgement of journalistic excellence on the global stage. For many years, the South African Broadcasting Corporation, through the dedicated work of Mr. Sherwin Brycepeace, has provided the South African public with insightful, accurate, and timely reporting on the deliberations and developments within the United Nations. Their work plays a vital role in keeping our nation apprised of critical international affairs.
Visitors gathered on Tuesday around the iconic golden mask of King Tutankhamun of Egypt's Grand Egyptian Museum as the long-awaited Tutankhamun Gallery opened to the public for the first time. Although parts of the vast museum had been accessible in recent years, this marks the first opportunity for visitors to step inside the Boy King's Chamber, the museum's spectacular centerpiece near the Giza pyramids.
Very elaborate, all the gold and the details and how they treated the kings and how apparently they loved him and worshipped and how they treated the life and the afterlife and the family. It's amazing.
I've been to the former museums, to the pyramids, and it's really amazing. But now, this time, the situation is exceeding all expectations because this is a marvel that you have built here. Congratulations.
And that's how we come to the end of today's Roundup. Africa Roundup. We'll do this again after the 6 a.m. news tomorrow. But coming up, we delve deeper into matters that we need to get into the know of in the Central African region of our continent. Peter will be spearheading that conversation as we get analysis from an analyst, Aaron Ngambi. He comes in on Thursdays. Stay tuned.
Celebrate life every day. Tune in to Channel Africa. Stay connected through a new website and free mobile app. Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water-secure future. Register today at ausisa-watersan-dialogue.org or follow at AUSISA on social media. AUSISA, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa.
Ready to connect, innovate, and be inspired? It's all happening at Africa's Tech Festival, where Africa's technology meets the world. From the 10th to the 13th of November in Cape Town, join global leaders, investors, and innovators driving the future of Africa's digital economy. Don't miss the continent's biggest week in tech. Get your pass now at africatechfestival.com.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
And it's time now for the Central Africa Wrap. And this morning we're focusing on a series of developments across Central and West Africa, where election unrest, border closures, energy transitions, and stalled peace talks are reshaping regional dynamics. And to help us unpack these stories and their implications for Africa and beyond, we're now joined by geopolitical analyst Aaron Ngambi. Aaron, always good to talk to you. A very good morning.
Morning, Peter. Thank you for having me, and happy Friday Eve.
Yes, I like the sound of that. So let's start with Cameroon. The president, Paul Biya, won the election, and protests have erupted. I guess him ensuring his victory is not new, but it does seem that these protests might be slightly different. Do you think that something has changed in terms of the pushback towards election results this time around?
Yeah, unfortunately, we are back in a situation where we have Paul Biya back in power at 92 years old. The only thing that is kind of different now is that the opposition leader is a front runner or challenger, is somebody that was in government with him and broke ties with him as of June last year, actually June of this year. And this person put up a big and huge fight against Paul Biya, and in fact claimed that he won the elections even before the official results. So these protests and arrests and these disputes arise from the fact that you have now an opposition leader that claims that he won the election before the Constitutional Council announced that election. And then you have the incumbent claiming that he's back for the 80th time. What is unfortunate is that these protests have claimed the lives of 48 people, and that is just too many lives at the expense of keeping a 92-year-old man in power.
All right, so what's the end game, or what might still happen, do you think? Or is this going to be another scenario like Mozambique, where eventually the protests died down and the new president was able to begin his term?
It is very difficult to sustain these protests after the elections, and then you, whether legitimately or illegitimately, you have an incumbent that usurps power and then uses the instruments of power, uses the security wings to do everything to crush dissent. This regime has done this before. They have tried everything they can to silence people of Cameroon. I have no doubt that they will do tricks that they've learned over years to try to stop these protests. However, this will largely depend on the will of the people and how determined the people are, including the opposition who's claimed he won the elections. This could go on for many, many days, maybe even in coming weeks and months. But will this lead to a change of power, or will this lead to the toppling of the regime? It is just something we're yet to see, but it doesn't come close to what we are seeing right now.
Okay, let's turn to Chad, where the government there has closed the border with Nigeria after US threats to possibly deploy military action against Nigeria. What's your take on this?
This is unfortunate. It is so absurd to see that our bilateral relations between African countries is determined by what the man sitting in the White House tweets or puts out on his social media called Truth Social. This is just so unbelievable. Donald Trump claimed on one of his posts that Christians have been massacred and killed in Nigeria, and therefore, if the Nigerian government doesn't do anything about this, he's going to send American troops to march into Nigeria and kill all these jihadists and these Muslims that are killing Christians. Now, you recall, Peter, that this issue of Boko Haram and other jihadist groups have been going on in Nigeria and other places in West Africa. This is not the first time. However, Trump wants to dramatize this because the issue is not really Boko Haram and the jihadists or the killings of Christians. I don't think Trump cares anything for Christians at all. The issue is really what is happening between Nigeria and China. Therefore, for Chad to act in this way and trying to close the border is really unfortunate.
And I guess with the right-wing hardcore Christian support base back at home in the US, it sounds good that he wants to protect Christians around the world, even actually, because there's no way he'd send troops to Nigeria into a sovereign state. But anyway, let's go to Angola now. The country signed an exclusive oil exploration deal with Shell, whilst also investing in solar and biofuel projects there. Is this a genuine step towards energy diversification, do you think, or just another way of reinforcing its oil-dependent economy?
Angola has been in trouble of late. They have had so many economic hardships, and I think they're really struggling to get back on their feet. And largely because they've been an economy that has depended on oil for so many years. Shell coming back to Angola is nothing really new at all because they've been in that country, extracted the country's oil wealth for so many years. But now they've pledged that they're going to inject in $1 billion into the economy, thereby, creating jobs and then eventually be able to diversify into biofuels and solar and other things. In fact, I think it is predicted that with this deal, they want to be producing at least 1 million barrels of oil per day. Now, that sounds very good. And on paper, it looks very good because this is job creation. This will bring money to the treasury, and this is all about revenue for the country. But really, the problem is not these kind of investments that come in. The problem is how do these investments affect the lives of the people on a daily basis? How does this trickle down to the economics that people know, the bread and butter issues? This is where most African countries, including Angola, have been lacking for so many years.
So, the Democratic Republic of Congo, perhaps predictably, the talks in Doha have collapsed once again. Do we know what caused this round of failure and the latest on these negotiations?
No, the sticky issues of these negotiations are basically the same. So, on one hand, the Kinshasa government in the Democratic Republic of Congo claims or want the Rwandan forces to leave the eastern part of the DR Congo, or they want the Rwandese to stop, or Paul Kagame to stop funding the M23 as they claim. And on the other hand, the M23 are claiming that these kind of this kind of talks to be able to make progress, what they want is to make sure that they have surety guarantees, and that in fact, after the fighting is over, they have to be integrated into institutions of governance. They have to get into the army or other institutions. But on the other hand, the Rwandan government is claim is that they are doing this, or they actually have a vested interest in the eastern part of the DR Congo, simply because the FDLR is in the eastern part of the Congo. These are the groupings that President Kagame has referred to, that they have something to do with the genocide of 1994. The Hutu group, and therefore he wants that to be completely disarmed and disbanded, and that the Congo is a place that hubs them. And so that is why he would do anything to protect the sovereignty and the territory of Rwanda, and even if it means to go into a neighboring country and follow these terrorists, according to him. So these are the sticky issues that talks in Doha have collapsed over. These are the sticky issues that even when they came to Washington, D.C., these are issues that have come up. Wherever they have gone, the demands are the same. The M23 wants to be able to seize this fighting and be able to be part of the governance system of the country. The Rwandese want the FDLR to be disbanded and be completely alienated, but also the Congolese want something different. So this has been very different, and it's been problematic.
All right, and then on perhaps a bit more positive note, the African Development Bank has approved a major youth development loan for Equatorial Guinea. How significant is this kind of investment for addressing youth unemployment across Central Africa?
Well, this is, it's definitely a positive news item. We're talking of billions and millions of dollars that the African Development Bank has actually injected in this project, and they want to build these polytech training skills across Equatorial Guinea, and train women and youth in different skills, especially agriculture, fisheries, and other digital tech and other areas of skills, so that they can compete, so that they can have jobs, and some of them probably go into small businesses. So definitely this is something that would be good for not only the government of Equatorial Guinea, but the people of Equatorial Guinea. The only problem is that we are yet to see the implementation part of this. So these are agreements and promises and loans that have been talked about, and I think that we're yet to see the actual implementation, especially towards the end of this year.
That's where we're going to have to leave it. Always good to talk to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Have a great week in between, and we'll chat next week.
Thank you, Peter. Have a wonderful day.
That's our regular commentator on Central African issues, geopolitical analyst Aaron Mgambi, giving us the take on developments in that part of our continent. And he'll be back at the same time next week to give us more on how things have been developing, particularly in countries like Cameroon, where protests are taking place. Sadly, 48 people have lost their lives already, but we'll keep on top of that story for you. Right now, though, let's catch you up with the news headlines. And at the desk today is Onele Nsinsi. Good morning.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. With gratitude for the voices, the rhythm, and the dreams that unite us all.
Roho ya Afrika inaishi katika kila hadithi tunayosimulia.
Each new day is a gift, a reminder to pause, to breathe, and to give thanks for the laughter we share and the journeys we take, and the stories stories that shape who we are.
Cada nascer do sol, lembre-te de algo pelo qual ser grato. La vie est un voyage, parcourons-la avec gratitude.
Channel Africa. Celebrate the beauty of life with gratitude for the voices, the rhythms, and the dreams that unite us all. This is Africa with Channel Africa, the African perspective. SABC News. Headlines. The African perspective.
We do apologize for that delay. Thank you, Peter. Looking at your headlines, the African Union's observer mission has reported that Tanzania's elections did not comply with the democratic standards of the disputed vote that triggered deadly protests. South Africa's Crimes Intelligence Head General Dumisani Khumalo has told the Madlanga Commission that Police Minister Senzo Mchunu was angry at a proposal that the Political Killings Task Team should not be disbanded. And Bangladesh has announced cash reward for people surrendering thousands of firearms looted during an anti-government uprising last year. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African perspective.
And now let's get our the first full sports update for this morning from the world of sports. Here's Musuli Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports desk. So the Executive Committee of the Confederation of African Football, CAF, has approved the expansion of the Total Energies CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament from 12 to 16 teams, starting with the next edition to be staged in Morocco from the 17th of March right until the 3rd of April in 2026. So as the qualification phase for the 2026 edition has already been completed, the Executive Committee has approved the selection mechanism to determine the 4 additional teams. Now, based on the current FIFA World Rankings, the top 4 teams from those eliminated in the final qualifying round have been selected to complete the list of participants. The following teams will therefore join the finals in Morocco next year: Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, as well as Egypt. There are, in addition to the 12 nations already qualified for the tournament, that is the host nation Morocco, Zambia, Tanzania, Malawi, Algeria, Nigeria, Ghana, Burkina Faso, Kenya, Cape Verde, South Africa, as well as Senegal. We'll stay with football news. Zimbabwe's football's governing body, ZIFA, has appointed Mario Marineka as the new head coach of the Zambia men's national football team, the Warriors, on a 1-year contract. Now, Marineka is a Romanian national who has previously managed Malawi as well as Liberia. The 60-year-old is a UEFA Pro license holder with over 25 years of experience in the game. In a statement that ZIFA released on Wednesday, they said that Maranika was given a 1-year contract and will be commencing his duty later on this month. He comes in to replace Michael Nice, who was fired just last month following a string of poor results. Maranika's first assignment will be the upcoming friendly matches against Qatar as well as Algeria. On to summer cricket news now. South Africa's women's Proteas coach Mandla Mashimbi says that reaching their first ever ICC ODI World Cup final has fostered individual growth as well as team unity. Mashimbi says after a short rest, the team will pay attention to next year's T20 World Cup that is taking place in England.
What's next is we embark on the next project. T20 is our next project, so we'll put our emphasis on that and make sure that we get that philosophy going, make every player understand what is expected of them, we're not going to take anything for granted in terms of the teams that we play against. We're going to show them that we are the second best team in the world. We're going to bring the fire, and it's for them to deal with it.
On to some boxing news now. South Africa's straw-white sensation that is Siya Kolwa Kuse remains undeterred in his quest to become world champion after many thought he had done enough to dethrone Malvin Jerusalem in the Philippines. Now the challenger from Danzani in South Africa's Eastern Cape province pushed his limit as well as pushed the Filipino champion in what was a gripping 12-round fight. Kuse believes his preparation couldn't have been much better.
Okay, my preparation for this fight, it was good and hard. It was not easy, you see, and I worked very hard for this fight. You see, I used to train 2 times a day. So if I didn't come for training in the morning, I will make sure that I wake up and run.
Now, the Southpaw tactician was left disappointed when none of the 3 judges scored the fight in his favour, even though he was the more active fighter on the night, setting the pace as well as stringing together some crafty combinations. Kuse is nonetheless grateful for all the support he received back home and for the opportunity to display his skills on the world stage. He's now itching to tempt fate again, but when his next title shot comes around, Kuse is certain that he will be world champion.
I want to say thank people of South Africa for supporting me. And I didn't expect what I've seen on social media. I see people believing in me. All I can say, thank you, South African people. Next year or next time, I will become the world champion.
Right, so on that positive note, that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. The world is watching Johannesburg. Leaders from the planet's biggest economies gather to make decisions that shape nations, markets, and futures. You already know Channel Africa will be right there, bringing you the conversations, insights, and analysis that matter.
The best is yet to come.
The G20 Summit from the 22nd to the 23rd of November. As it happens, from an African perspective, stay tuned to Channel Africa and get all the G20 analysis.
Right, let's get some business news analysis right now, always with the African perspective. And it's time to say good morning to Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Subtropical farmers in South Africa have expressed confidence in growing the industry to its highest levels. Over 340 farmers have gathered for the 20th Annual Subtropical Marketing Symposium in the Mpumalanga province. The gathering aims to highlight processes, challenges and possible solutions with regards to the farming market in the country and abroad. The CEO of the Subtropical Growers Association, Derek Donkin.
We, in the program, want to give them information that's relevant to making decisions at a strategic level. So it's about the economy, it's about stimulating thinking about how we're doing promotions, it's about hearing what's happening in politics, and it's also about hearing what's happening on the technical side a little bit with chemicals, etc., etc. So all very important, and people come to listen to get new ideas, but very importantly, they come to network, to speak to each other, growers speaking to their exporters, to their marketers, people that are input service providers.
The ND Executive Chairman of Oppenheimer Generations Foundations, Jonathan Oppenheimer, has urged delegates attending the 2-day South African Future Trust Summit to use it to build networks that will grow their businesses. The summit is in its 3rd year, which brings together top entrepreneurs and innovators as well as change makers as they share groundbreaking insights and strategies.
48 hours to be here. Make it valuable. Build the network. Make the connections, make sure that these 48 hours create value for you. Don't come here and enjoy the good coffee and the great food. That's good, do that, but most important, use your time valuably to expand your network and make your business better. It's all about valuable use of time.
South African mobile operator Cell C says it intends to list all its ordinary shares on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange through a private placement of existing shares by the prepaid company TPC, a unit of Blue Label Telecoms. According to the operator's statement, together with the listing, TPC plans to offer Cell C shares it owns to select investors to raise about $445 million, including an option of about $28.9 million and an allocation of up to $139 million to a Black Economic Empowerment Vehicle. Proceeds will be used to settle debt, pay dividends, and fund working capital. Cell C will not receive any proceeds from the sale. In West Africa, Nigeria has launched the sale of $2.25 billion of Eurobonds. The move comes after markets largely shrugged off threats from U.S. President Donald Trump of potential military action in the country. According to book runner Chapel Hill Denham, the oil-producing country will use the money to cover the government's fiscal deficit. On Sunday, Trump threatened military action in Nigeria if the country did not crack down on the killing of Christians. The following day, Nigeria's long-dated sovereign bonds slipped, with the 2051 falling roughly 0.5 cents before retracing some of the losses. The U.S. Department of Transportation is to begin cutting flights from Friday because of the continuing government shutdown. The Federal Aviation Administration says it will cut air traffic by 10% across 40 busy airports in order to maintain safety. Air traffic controllers have been working without pay for more than a month, and some are now calling in sick. The BBC's Peter Bowes says the government is trying to reassure travelers.
There is no indication right now that air travel in this country is not safe. That's what they're trying to avoid. In fact, the FAA has said that the system is still operating safely, but they are warning about these staffing problems and the fatigue pressures, especially amongst its staff, saying that as time goes on, this is now a record-breaking shutdown in terms of the number of days, and the problems are only going to get worse.
Now let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,440 naira. In Botswana, 13 pula 35. Kenya, 128 shilling 26. Zambia, 22 kwacha 37. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 38. In Russia, 81 rubles 18. India, 88 rupees 65. China, 71.13. South Africa, 17 rand 13 cents. A look at commodities. Gold is at $3,986. Platinum at $1,551 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $63.77 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
It's time now for our G20 fact for the morning, and it's a funny fact, this one. Did you know that at the 2023 summit in New Delhi, the menu for delegates featured dishes with playful names such as Biden Tandoori Malai Broccoli and Trump Half Tandoor Chicken? And during the serious discussions in that year, a food delivery app in India shared a humorous social media post with a plate of popular Indian biscuits called Parle G and a cup of tea with the witty caption, "Everyone is invited to my Parle G20 summit." And that's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Listen in on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Now, South African entrepreneur and executive chairman of the Oppenheimer Generations Foundation, Jonathan Oppenheimer, has urged delegates attending the two-day South African Future Trust Summit to use it to build networks that will grow their businesses. The summit is in its third year now and brings together top entrepreneurs, innovators, and changemakers as they share groundbreaking insights and strategies Tuto Ngobeni brings us more.
The South African Future Trust Summit, SAFT, is taking place at the Sandton Convention Centre. The two-day event, in its third year, brings together top entrepreneurs, innovators and change makers as they share groundbreaking insights and strategies. The summit is also hosting an exclusive exhibitions and high-impact networking sessions and a $1 million pitch finale. South African entrepreneur and executive chairman of Oppenheimer Generations Foundation, Jonathan Oppenheimer, has urged delegates attending the summit to use it to build networks that will grow their businesses further.
48 hours to be here, make it valuable, build the network, make the connections, make sure that these 48 hours create value for you. Don't come here and enjoy the good coffee and the great food. That's good, do that, but most important, use your time valuably to expand your network and make your business better. It's all about valuable use.
Working with all spheres of society can change the future of the country.
And we're the people who will get out there in front of us of everything and make the future for our country. And the entrepreneur, the small business, is the cutting edge. It's the tip of the spear of that achievement. And you in this room are the tip of that tipping spear. And I really, really believe that we, working with government, working with big business, working with communities, working with churches, working with religious groups, working with every single partner that we can find, can make the future of South Africa better than it is today.
The summit this year is in partnership with Standard Bank. As part of day one of the summit, Jonathan Oppenheimer and Standard Bank's Chief Executive Officer for Business and Commercial Banking, Bill Blackie, opened the summit with a discussion on the importance of small-medium enterprises, SMEs, in driving economic growth in Africa and the role that institutions like Standard Bank and SAFT must play in empowering SMEs to reach their full potential.
Jonathan and his father were absolutely groundbreaking in what they did in that very difficult time. They disbursed R1 billion. We did 250 million rand. That's a very significant contribution. In that context, protected 3,500 businesses, 22,000 employees. And the purpose of that is actually because it goes to Standard Bank's purpose. Standard Bank's purpose is Africa's our home, we drive her growth. And so there's complete alignment between what Jonathan talks about, unlocking the potential of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial businesses.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tuto Ngobeni in Johannesburg.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
South Africa's drive towards universal health coverage, or UHC, has received strong international support, with experts highlighting its potential to transform the country's healthcare landscape. This week, South Africa's Department of Health, in collaboration with the London School of Economics and Political Science and the Clinton Health Access Initiative, hosted a public panel discussion on accelerating universal health coverage and health security in South Africa. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe filed this report.
Universal health coverage and health security are two of the most urgent priorities in global health today, and achieving them simultaneously will enable countries like South Africa to improve health outcomes, protect their populations from future pandemics, generate economic growth, and reduce entrenched inequalities in society. This public event brought together leading voices in global health to engage South African policymakers, practitioners, academics, students, civil society, and the wider public in a dynamic discussion on how UHC and health security can be advanced together. Professor David McCoy from the United Nations University's International Institute for Global Health said he's fully behind South Africa's NHI initiative.
I agree with the support for national health insurance because it is essentially the health system towards a universal health system. So this is really an expression of a health system that is about social solidarity. It's about equity. first and foremost. And these are, of course, principles that you either support or you don't. And if you support these principles, then the way to move forward is through a universal health system.
He said this initiative is imperative to undo the injustices of the past.
And I think in South Africa in particular, this idea of creating a health system that advances equity is all the more important because of the historical and structural factors that have created and left this as possibly, if not the most unequal country in the world, one of them. As I understand it, 0.1% of the population owns 25% of the country's wealth. I also understand that it's only 3,500 individuals who own 15% of the country's wealth.
Professor McCoy noted that this has created a huge wealth distribution gap between the rich and the poor, a worldwide phenomenon.
So there's huge inequitable distribution of private wealth, but at the same time, over the last 3 or 4 decades, South Africa has seen a divergence in the amount of private wealth relative to public wealth. And this is a phenomenon that is occurring right across the world. Private wealth is growing and public wealth is stagnating or declining as a percentage of gross national income or GDP.
With plans on site, questions about the NHI funding model have been raised. In providing a solution, Dr. Finn Maguire from the University of York's London School of Economics says this can be achieved through taxation.
Probably the best way of funding that is through the tax system, because the tax system is an explicit system which does precisely that, subsidy. It subsidizes the ill or the poor, the wealthy and the healthy. So the tax system generally is the route of movement as countries move towards universal healthcare coverage.
Furthermore, Maguire said the system provides financial security to taxpayers while emphasizing that South Africa is at an advantage due to its younger population.
If we move to a taxation system, it does another thing as well, though. It also provides, or a universal healthcare coverage system funded by the tax system, it provides financial security for your population. It allows them not to think about premium prices going up. It allows them to focus on paying their tax and through the taxation gain financial security for when they do become ill. And South Africa's in a great position just now, unlike a number of other countries. You've got a very young population, and that young population is going into your workforce just now. And as your formal workforce grows, it gives you a wider tax base across which you can then generate the funds to provide provision for the universal healthcare coverage.
Meanwhile, Dr. Makoto Tobe from Japan International Cooperation Agency highlighted how Japan introduced its UHC after the Second World War.
So Japan attained universal health coverage where all people, all Japanese citizens can enjoy the good quality of health care without worry about the money in 1961. 1961 means right just 16 years after the end of the Second World War. Japan was defeated. And many of you know the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So Japan was so devastated that many Japanese wanted to have the new society where many people can live in a peaceful and healthy.
He said the introduction of NHC in 1961 has resulted in economic and health successes.
And the impact or benefit of such a national universal health insurance was huge, both in terms of health as well as the economic development. For example, life expectancy. In 1950, or the 5 years after the Second World War, the longevity of the life of the females in Japan was just 60 years old. But after that, Japan, the local government introduced the health insurance system, and in 1960, it reached to the 70 years old. And now, last year, 2024, it was 88 years. So in 1950, it was just 60, which was the shortest among the G7 countries. And now we are enjoying 88, which is longest among the G7 countries.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Zimbabweans living in the diaspora have condemned the country's governing party, ZANU-PF, decision to push for President Emmerson Mnangagwa to remain in office until 2030. This follows the ruling party's announcement to begin the process of extending Mnangagwa's term by 2 years. The proposal was formally endorsed at a ZANU-PF annual National People's Conference in the eastern city of Mutare last month, where delegates instructed government structures to start drafting legislation to amend the constitution. Wanolo Maribe has more. All right, so that's a fascinating story that we'll get to the top of. We'll try and bring you that report a little bit later on. But just to give you a bit more background on that particular story. So the constitution can be changed for sure. The ZANU-PF party has a clear majority in the country. However, I think for something like this, what needs to happen is that there needs to be a referendum. And that might be a little bit more difficult to pass through this legislation. So there isn't currently, my understanding, any law that can assist ZANU-PF to extend President Mnangagwa's term in office. A referendum certainly needs to take place. And the difference between a referendum and the elections, as we've seen them in the past, the elections with the MPs in Parliament, the demarcation can be done in such a way that a small area in Harare with densely populated can be given few seats, whereas a large area with very few people can be given many seats in Parliament. So you can manipulate the number of votes you have in Parliament, but for a referendum, it's one man, one vote. And it does appear that probably when it comes to going to people on the street on a one-man, one-vote basis, they probably won't get enough votes to change that part of the constitution to give President Mnangagwa another 2 years in office. But we'll keep on top of that story for you. As you can imagine, Zimbabweans, not just in the diaspora, but many inside the country, not happy with that. And also within ZANU-PF itself, there is a faction that is falling behind the Deputy President Constantino Chiwenga, who don't want President Mnangagwa to extend his term. So he's probably going to be fighting battles on all fronts going forward if he's going to stay in power. That's developments in Zimbabwe at this time.
The voice of the continent, now online, with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
Qu'est-ce qui vous a amené à dire ça? Est-ce que vous avez observé un certain nombre d'événements dans la vie? Est-ce que c'était par rapport à une expérience? Est-ce que vous avez rencontré des choses qui vous ont dit il faut de la patience, comme ça les choses vont venir au bon moment et le bon Dieu pourra peut-être me visiter?
Oui, c'était justement un conseil que le Seigneur m'a fait inspirer pour donner à son peuple, parce qu'il y a la plupart des gens, pendant que Dieu bénit les autres, ils pensent que Dieu les a oubliés, et pendant que Dieu ouvre pour les autres, ils pensent que peut-être Dieu n'a pas pu écouter leurs prières. Alors ce n'est pas le cas. Alors Dieu bénit tout un chacun de nous avec son temps. Donc le temps de Dieu est toujours le meilleur dans la vie de tout un chacun de nous.
Mix Vibration tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
Central African Time. This is the second hour of the program, Rise and Shine. Thanks very much indeed for tuning in and joining us. As you've just heard there, this is where you'll get the African perspective. Broadcasting from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, on the internet. www.channelafrica.co.za is where you can find us. And also on your mobile apps, just go to your app store, look for SABC Plus, and then Channel Africa. By the way, I'm Peter Ndoro.
My name is Asanda Beda. In this hour, we look at the inauguration of Cameroon's President Paul Biya. We'll be speaking to a reporter live from Yaoundé there to give us a sense of what the mood is like as he prepares for his inauguration. I wonder who's also invited there. I hope it will be different from what we saw in Tanzania, where it was shut away from people. The very people who voted couldn't even attend. But we'll be discussing that story and more. Let's start with our news first. At 7:07, here's Onele Nzinzi, and then following her is Musibudi Makura with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. The African Union's Observer Mission has reported that Tanzania's elections did not comply with the democratic standards of the disputed October 29 vote. President Samia Suluhu Hassan was declared landslide winner of the vote that triggered deadly protests, but opponents accused the government of fraud. There's also been protests over the exclusion of her main challengers. Hassan, who was sworn in back into office on Monday after being credited with 98% of the vote, acknowledged people had died, but her government has called the opposition toll hugely exaggerated. The mission concludes that the 2025 Tanzania general election did not comply with AU principles, normative frameworks and other international obligations and standards for democratic elections. And your report says Sudan's network of community kitchen is on the verge of collapse. The charity Islamic Relief Worldwide says neglect, shortages and volunteer exhaustion means most kitchens are facing closure. The BBC's Richard Kago reports.
Community kitchens have been a lifeline for millions across Sudan. In El Fasher, recently captured by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, they were the only source of food for many families during an 18-month siege that cut off international aid. Islamic Relief warns that the collapse of this vital safety net would be catastrophic. A volunteer in Khartoum says 11 kitchens have shut this year, while others have severely cut portions, now serving 1 meal a day instead of 3. A UN-backed hunger report says famine conditions are now emerging in 2 more areas, including El Fasher and Kadugli in South Kordofan state, both cut off by conflict.
A new witness will take to the stand at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry in South Africa this morning. This comes after Crime Intelligence Head General Dumisani Khumalo concluded his testimony on the disbandment of the Political Killings Task Team. The PKTT was disbanded in December 2024 by Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, who has been placed on special leave, Sibahle Mota reports.
After a long day at the Madlanga Commission, the man who has helped solve some of the country's top political killings investigations concluded his testimony on Wednesday. General Dumisani Khumalo, the project leader for the PKTT, testified extensively about its disbandment. The intelligence head told the commission that he found out about the PKTT's disbandment on social media. His testimony corroborates that of KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. The PKTT is at the heart of the Madlanga Commission, which is looking into allegations of political interference in law enforcement agencies.
Namibia says it's intensifying its push to host the African regional hub of the Green Climate Fund as the UN Climate Change Conference gets underway in Belém, Brazil today. President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has confirmed that Namibia has already submitted its bid.
If you look to the Environmental Management Fund, it has really benefited from the Green Climate Fund, and we still want to benefit more. Because we really have areas, particularly Kunene, that is most hit by the climate change. So going to this conference, we are trying to see how we can benefit ourselves. Another thing is the question of water, which is a challenge. And the climate change and water are discussed together. So that is why Namibia is part of the global water program, partnership program.
And lastly, Bangladesh has announced cash rewards for people surrendering thousands of firearms looted during an anti-government uprising last year. Officials say machine guns, rifles and pistols were stolen from police armories. The BBC's Anbarasan Etirajan.
Police in Bangladesh are still struggling to retrieve the weapons stolen during last year's anti-government protests. More than 1,300 firearms are still missing. The rewards range from $4,000 for a machine gun to $800 for an assault rifle. Police have promised complete confidentiality, urging people to hand the guns in. Bangladesh has been in turmoil since the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina fled into exile last year.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, CAF announces the expansion of the Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament to 16 teams from 2026, while Phil Foden fires Man City to a comfortable victory in the Champions League last night. Details coming up at 7:30.
Where Africa's voices rise, with stories that matter, we lead the conversation.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Zimbabweans living abroad have criticized a move by the country's ruling party, ZANU-PF, to keep President Emmerson Mnangagwa in power beyond his current term. The party has announced plans to begin a process that would extend his presidency by 2 years, allowing him to remain in office until 2030. The proposal was endorsed at ZANU-PF's annual national conference in the eastern city of Mutare last month, where delegates directed government institutions to begin drafting constitutional amendments to make the change possible. Bunolo Maribe reports.
Various opposition groups and activists convened in Johannesburg to discuss the potential implications of President Mnangagwa's ambition to extend his tenure. The briefing took place after the Southern African Political Economic Series Trust building in Zimbabwe was destroyed by fire, where opposition party members were expected to hold a briefing. ZAPU Secretary General Umtulisi Hanana outlined the purpose of the conference.
And the extension is going to affect both the term of the president and that of parliament. And as Zimbabwe citizens, we decided to respond to what government has said, because in Zimbabwe there is a conflation between the state, the party, and the securocrat, which is the army. They work joined like Siamese twins in everything that they do.
While deputy leader of the Freedom Alliance, President Ngulube, criticized the government for silencing them.
As we speak, no media is allowed to cover us. An attempt at a press conference was foiled at the Blue Lagoon private offices of the ZAPU President Nkomo by heavily armed police who blocked the media from getting in. 2 of our planned public meetings in Bulawayo have been stopped.
A sentiment that Secretary for Information and Publicity for the Mtwakazi Republic Party, Mbonisi Gumbo, echoed.
As the people of Matabeleland and also as the people of the whole nation, we have been complaining about the issues of freedom of expression. The government have refused to give us freedom to exercise our democratic rights as the people, as the citizens.
Meanwhile, political activist Josephat Ngulube urged the youth to participate actively in the resistance.
The future does not belong to those old thieves, it belongs to the youth of Zimbabwe. Let us be honest, those of us 40 and above have failed Africa. We have watched the tyrants grow older in power and called it stability. We have mistaken silence for peace. But Gen Z, the children of hunger and broken promises, have taken up the mantle.
The diaspora's response underscores the deepening divide between Zimbabwe's political landscape and its citizens abroad. Bunolo Maribe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Africa has voiced disappointment over a United Nations Security Council resolution that describes Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara as a potentially most feasible outcome to the long-going, long-running dispute. Now, the resolution reaffirms the Council's support for the UN Secretary-General's personal envoy in leading negotiations between the parties, including the pro-independence group, the Frente Polisario, using Morocco's autonomy proposal as a framework for talks aimed at reaching a mutually acceptable political solution that upholds the principle of self-determination for the people of Western Sahara. However, as Sherwin Bryce-Beese reports from New York, the decision is seen as a setback for the Frente Polisario, which has long demanded a UN-organized referendum on independence for what it regards as the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. All right, so that's a story that, again, we'll try and bring you the report on, but certainly a contentious issue, divides, much like Middle East, Israel. A lot of countries taking sides, as it were, on how the Western Sahara question should be answered and dealt with. Neighboring Algeria certainly has a view. And those that have visited that part of Morocco, Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, also having another view. But we'll try and get that report for you a little bit later.
Wake up with gratitude, hope, and the African spirit. Channel Africa, now easier to access than ever before. WhatsApp us on +27 63 406 9126.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Africa, it's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Tamo kutuli bwanji ndi
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Right, let's go back to that story now where South Africa has disappointed with the UN Security Council's resolution regarding Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara and the Polisario Front wanting a different outcome going forward. Of course, they call that part of the world the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. Let's listen to that report now from Sherwin Bryce-Beese.
11 votes in favour, 3 abstentions from Russia, China and Pakistan, while close Polisario ally Algeria boycotted the vote in protest. The United States is the pen holder on the Western Sahara file in the Council. Listen to Washington's envoy, Ambassador Mike Waltz.
The United States is resolute. President Trump is resolute in his support for peace. We are deeply committed to supporting a mutually acceptable solution in the Western Sahara, and we are deeply committed to resolving this issue, this long-standing issue. We urge all parties to use the coming weeks to come to the table and engage in serious discussions using Morocco's credible and realistic autonomy proposal as the only basis for a just and lasting solution to the dispute.
The resolution also renewed the mandate of the MINURSO mission, short for the UN mission for the referendum in Western Sahara, for 1 year. Morocco considers the territory its own, while the Frente Polisario is seeking a referendum that could establish a fully fledged independent state. The Council resolution now urges the parties to engage in negotiations on the basis of Morocco's autonomy plan first put forward in 2007, which would give Rabat control over Western Sahara's defense, foreign affairs and religion, while establishing a local legislative, executive and judicial authority elected by its residents. Algeria's ambassador Amar Benjama slammed the text as favouring the vision of one party to the conflict over the other.
Par cette absence, et en toute responsabilité.
By this absence, and in full responsibility, Algeria wished to illustrate the distance that we put between in a text that does not sufficiently reflect the UN doctrine with regard to decolonization.
Qui ne reflète pas suffisamment.
A view echoed by South Africa that pointed to the name of the mission and a resolution that now undermined its core mandate, warning that the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara was paramount. Deputy Permanent Representative Martinus van Schalkwyk.
This calls into question the core mandate of MINURSO to facilitate the holding of a referendum on giving expression to a just, lasting, and mutually acceptable political solution which would provide for the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara. The issue of Western Sahara is both a peace and security matter and a matter of decolonization. Therefore, it can only be resolved through direct talks between Morocco and the Polisario Front. It cannot be resolved through a non-inclusive peace process with preconditions for negotiations, such as using Morocco's proposal as the only framework to negotiate a mutually acceptable solution.
The Frente Polisario stressed it would not be party to any negotiations that favoured Morocco's plan, but would continue to engage in UN-led processes. Listen to Polisario's UN representative, Ambassador Sidi Omar.
The message is very clear today by the Security Council that the way forward is a solution that's mutually acceptable to both the Frente Polisario and Morocco, the occupying state, and which necessarily provides for the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara. So the story is not over, will never be over, until the Sahrawi people have been able to exercise freely and democratically their inalienable right to self-determination and independence.
While Morocco's King Mohammed VI welcomed the Council's decision.
After 50 years of sacrifice, we are, with God's help and guidance, embarking on a new chapter in consolidating the Moroccan identity of the Sahara and bringing a definitive end to this artificial conflict through a consensual solution based on the Autonomy Initiative.
Western Sahara represents the longest-running territorial dispute in Africa, dating back to the departure of Spain as a colonial power in 1975. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
The G20 Summit, through African eyes, live updates, and expert voices, only on Channel Africa. Be inspired. Stay informed. Channel Africa, the beauty of life. Now available anytime, anywhere with our new app. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Let's head over to Cameroon now, where all eyes are on Yaoundé as President Paul Biya prepares to be inaugurated for a new 7-year term, extending his remarkable 43-year rule. The ceremony comes amid ongoing political tensions, with opposition parties rejecting the results of the October 12 election and calling for nationwide protests and lockdowns. Ahead of the inauguration, we speak live from Yaoundé with political analyst Paul Anchang to discuss what the ceremony signifies and what Cameroonians expect or might expect from this new term. Paul, good morning to you and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Chief from Cameroon, and thank you for having me on your platform.
Paul, are you there?
It's a pleasure joining you. Great this morning.
Paul, can you hear us?
Definitely, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Yes.
Well, thank you for joining us there from
Can you hear
Yaoundé.
me?
How would you describe the mood this morning ahead of this inauguration of President Paul Biya?
Well, the mood really, I would term it a little bit tense. Tense in the sense that we would see an arsenal of military personnel everywhere in the city of Yaoundé, taking the military precautions to make sure that the ceremony and the inauguration of the taking ceremony of the president of the Republic.
Paul, let me just cut you there. Apologies for that. Drop the line. We'll call you back on a much different line because you're breaking. We hardly are able to hear you. We'll return to you in a bit. Let's take a short break and we'll continue with that conversation. Going to Cameroon, where President Paul Biya is to be inaugurated. He now serves his 8th term. And he is in total having ruled the country for 43 years.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you will be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Stay tuned to Channel Africa. Stream us on our new and updated website, channelafrica.co.za. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Get in touch with us on Rise and Shine. We are on the various social media platforms and we'd love to hear your views and questions about our show. Our handle is at Channel Africa 1 and also we are live streaming on that same handle on YouTube. Let's go back to Cameroon now. I understand, Paul, we have you better on the line now and maybe we can hear you this time. Just describe for us again the mood there in Cameroon ahead of President Paul Biya's inauguration.
Well, the mood here, I would describe it as a return to normalcy here in Yaoundé, in the capital city of Cameroon. There's a return to normalcy, even though we would acknowledge the presence really of a military presence to assure that the oath-taking ceremony or the inauguration ceremony of the president-elect, President Paul Biya, because as of this moment, he's still the president-elect. It's once he takes on the swearing-in ceremony at the oath-taking ceremony that he officially becomes the head of state for the 9th time, the 9th swearing-in ceremony, oath-taking ceremony, which will be effectively his 8th mandate. Today, actually, 6th of November. He's actually called sometimes the man of the 6th of November because it's exactly on this same date in 1982 that he took over power. On the 4th of November 1982, that's when Cameroon's first president, Amadou Ahidjo, resigned and then gave power to his constitutional heir, which was President Paul Biya, who was then the prime minister, to become the president of the republic. So there is a return to normalcy in the capital city and over the national territory as well. We're seeing gradually people begin to return back to their normal occupations and their work. So there's a gradual return to normalcy. That's the word I would actually put it on, because for the past couple of days and maybe the past couple of weeks, we've seen a climate of tension, post-electoral tension between the FSNT opposition party and the ruling party, CPDM, in terms of the, the description in terms of who won the election.
Yeah, given that, then how is the opposition reacting to this inauguration, and could their reaction have an impact at all in terms of proceedings today?
Well, today their impact, I don't think their impact will have an impact on the proceedings of today. What we're seeing really is in pockets of resistance where the opposition has electoral circumscriptions and controls of those electoral circumscriptions. We've seen more the government try to get into consultations and talks with a lot of the transporters and a lot of the populations. Day-to-day, those who do the regular day-to-day jobs, I would say in the markets, the buyers, the sellers in the markets, those who do the transportations, especially from the north, the corridors of the north, we've seen the government enter into negotiation and consultation talks with them where they can provide them security in terms of the transportation of their trucks from corridors, especially if they go towards Chad and the Central African Republic. So therefore, we are seeing a gradual return to normalcy. So we don't anticipate in terms of the proceedings and the oath-taking ceremony today, a major change. Also, there's equally the fact that many believe that Issa Chiroma Bakari, the president of the FSNC party, is no longer in Cameroon. Many believe he's in Nigeria. It is yet to be officially known. Many also believe that many of those who were part of the FSNC political party, many of them have left the country as well. So therefore, we're seeing more and more people going back to their day-to-day activities as well. So we wouldn't anticipate in terms of Yaoundé, in terms of the security arsenal as well, that there will be any disturbance to the proceedings and the oath-taking ceremony today.
Who is expected to be in attendance at this inauguration in terms of dignitaries?
Well, that's a very good question as well. Well, we expect really most of the diplomatic corps that is represented in Cameroon. We haven't yet heard officially some major dignitaries that have announced for themselves in Yaoundé. But the ceremony starts at about 10:45 this morning. The President of the Republic, the President-elect, President Paul Biya, is expected at the National Assembly at 12 p.m., which will be 12 a.m. at noontime today. And that is precisely when, in terms of the constituted corps, members of the National Assembly, members of the Constitutional Council, because it is to be known the oath-taking ceremony in Cameroon is done in the presence of the National Assembly, in the National Assembly. The President of the National Assembly is the one who administers the oath-taking ceremony and the sermon, and the President pledges in front of the people, in front of the National Assembly, in front of the Constitutional Council that proclaim the result, and in front of also the Supreme Court as well, which handles all the jurisdictions and the court jurisdictions throughout the national territory and is the guardian of the Constitution. So in Cameroon, the legislature is much more presidential and Republican, so therefore the President of the Republic actually pledges his sermon in the National Assembly.
After 43 years in power, what are the key challenges and expectations for Biya's new term, and how might today's inauguration shape public perception, particularly the youth population's perception of him going forward?
That's the key question in this particular post-electoral crisis that we have seen. The population, as you rightly said, is 60 to 70% of youths. Many are waiting for the president's keynote address after his oath-taking ceremony to see in his profession of faith and his pledge if he's actually going to put out some public policy measures that would alleviate many of the questions that the youth have in terms of unemployment, in terms of development, in terms of infrastructure, also equally in terms of the diaspora, because many of them also want to be able to have double nationality. So that's the key part of this that's going to happen. Many are of the opinion that the presidential election in Cameroon was a sanctioned vote towards not necessarily only the President of the Republic, but equally towards really the apparatus in public service and in government as well. So it's left to be seen. The President of the Republic, the President-elect President Paul Biya, has said he will be able to swiftly help the youth, help women, and equally trying to bring a change in terms of the status of the opposition. So there's a lot of expectation that's left to be seen. So it's a very key moment. If the expectations are to be met or not met, that would depend really now on the message that the President of the Republic does in his keynote address at the National Assembly today for us to be able to get maybe a reality on the ground to see if or not they were convinced or not convinced by his address to the nation.
So things seem to be returning to normalcy as far as internally in Cameroon. But these elections were contested. We touched on that. So how do you assess the significance of this inauguration when it comes to the international observers or those watching from the international front?
Well, because the elections in Cameroon have taken a credibility and a transparency hit. because the opposition views that the election in themselves weren't too transparent. And it goes back to maybe the electoral code, where many in Cameroon have been actually saying that they will need an amelioration of Cameroon's electoral code for its interpretation to be much clearer. So I think there's a hit definitely into the electoral process into Cameroon as to the image in terms of the credibility and the transparency. Now, mind you, Cameroon has moved in its electoral process where the elections were handled before by the Ministry of Interior. You had ONEL 1, you had ONEL 2, and now you have a LECAM, which is the organizing body that handles and manages the organization of elections. So therefore, there is a serious need really in terms of credibility and transparency to make sure that the electoral process and the electoral code is ameliorated, and many Cameroonians are waiting for that. So on the international scene, I think that's really the most important thing, that in terms of credibility and transparency, Cameroon's electoral process has taken a hit. Now it's left to be seen where the actors or the stakeholders of this electoral process, the political parties who are decrying foul, and the President-elect, President Paul Biya, who will be sworn in today, saying he is going to do all he can to be able to ameliorate the electoral code and equally ameliorate the status of political opposition parties in Cameroon. Many also, in terms of civil society, feel that this is probably a transitional mandate or the last mandate of President Paul Biya. So they're really waiting to see if, in terms of concessions towards the opposition, in terms of concessions towards the civil society, he will be able to enact public policy measures that will help everybody and sustain increased development and local development and import and substitution for Cameroon.
Paul, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for your update.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to you, Asanda, and to Channel Africa.
Was Yaoundé-based political analyst Paul Anchang sharing his insights ahead of President Paul Biya's inauguration. 8th term, 7 years. 7:31 Central African time it is. Let's say good morning to Onele Nzinzi. She has our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. The African Union Observer Mission has reported that Tanzania's elections did not comply with the democratic standards of the disputed October 29 vote. The mission has concluded that the 2025 Tanzania general elections did not comply with AU principles, normative frameworks, and other international obligations and standards for democratic elections. A new report says Iran's network of community kitchen is on the verge of collapse. The charity Islamic Relief Worldwide says neglect, shortages and volunteer exhaustion means most kitchens are facing closure. And the South African government says it has received distress calls for assistance to return home from 17 South African men between the ages of 20 and 39 who are trapped in the war-torn Donbas region of Ukraine. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's find out now what's happening in the world of sport. And on the sports desk today is Musibudi Rachel Makura. Good morning.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning from the sports day. So Manchester City moved into the top 8 of the Champions League phase with a comprehensive 4-1 victory over Borussia Dortmund last night. Now, City boss Pep Guardiola described the game against Dortmund as massive in the race for qualification to the knockout phases, as they now look to avoid having an extra game in play, or rather in the playoff round, by securing a top 8 finish. Just last season, the playoff round was where the competition ended for the likes of Manchester City at the hands of Real Madrid, but City now look on course to avoid this season after Phil Foden's double, Erling Haaland's 18th goal of the season, as well as substitute Ryan Cherki's late goal, condemned Dortmund to just their second defeat of the season. On the continent now, the Executive Committee of the Confederation of African Football, CAF, has approved the expansion of the Total Energies CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament from 12 to 16 teams, starting with next year's edition to be staged in Morocco from the 17th of March to the 3rd of April. Now, as the qualification phase for the 2026 edition has already been completed, the Executive Committee has now approved the selection mechanism to determine the 4 additional teams. Now, based on the current FIFA World rankings. The top 4 teams from those eliminated and the final qualifying round have been selected to complete the list of participants. Now, the following teams will therefore join the finals of the WAFCON tournament in 2026. They include Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, as well as Egypt. There are, in addition to the 12 nations already qualified for next year's tournament, including the host nation Morocco, Zambia, Tanzania, Malawi, Algeria, Nigeria, Ghana, Burkina Faso, Kenya, Cape Verde, South Africa, as well as Senegal. Now, the decision is in line with CAF's strategic vision to strengthen the competitiveness as well as the development of women's football on the African continent. Now, this will also allow more nations to participate in Africa's women's football flagship competition, contributing, of course, to its continued growth as well as the global reach. The Total Energies CAF WAFCON also serves as the continental qualifier for the FIFA World Cup to be held in Brazil in 2027. Now, South Africa's Proteas women's coach Mandla Mashimbi says that reaching their first ever ICC ODI World Cup final has fostered individual growth as well as team unity. Mashimbi says after a short rest, the team will pay attention to next year's T20 World Cup that is taking place in England.
What's next is we embark on the next project. T20 is our next project, so we'll put our emphasis on that and make sure that we get that philosophy going, make every player understand what is expected of them, and we're not going to take anything for granted in terms of the teams that we play against. We're going to show them that we are the second best team in the world. We're going to bring the fire, and it's for them to deal with it.
And finally, in tennis news, Amanda Anisimova embraced the fight to overcome Iga Swiatek in 3 sets and joined the undefeated Elena Rybakina in the knockout stages of the WTA finals. In a winner-takes-all encounter, the Wimbledon as well as the US Open finalists progressed to Friday's semi-final with a 6-7, 6-4, 6-2 win over the Polish world number 2 in the city of Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Earlier, Rybakina completed a clean sweep of the Serena Williams group with a 6-4, 6-4 win over Ekaterina Alexandrova, a late replacement for the Anwar Madison Keys. Rybakina, who failed to progress past the 4th round at any of the Grand Slams in 2025, is now on a 9-match winning streak and has also dropped just 1 set all season, or rather at the season-ending event so far. Now, the leading 8 women's players in singles as well as doubles are competing in Saudi Arabia, where $15.5 million prize money will be won. In the Steffi Graf group, the world number 1 Arina Sabalenka plays defending champion Coco Gauff, while Jessica Pegula faces the already eliminated Yasmin Paolini in Thursday's final round robin matches. And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with the final sports update on Africa Rise and Shine in the next hour. It is 7:38 a.m. Central African Time for Channel Africa Sport. I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. With gratitude for the voices, the rhythm, and the dreams that unite us all.
Roho ya Afrika inaishi katika kila hadithi tunayosimulia.
Each new day is a gift, a reminder to pause, to breathe, and to give thanks for the laughter we share and the journeys we take and the stories that shape who we are.
Cada nascer do sol, lembre-te algo pelo qual ser grato.
La vie est un voyage, parcourons-la avec gratitude.
Channel Africa. Celebrate the beauty of life with gratitude for the voices, the rhythms, and the dreams that unite us all. This is Africa with Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
And now let's check in with the world of business. We say good morning to Chandugo Likege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning.
Budget airline FlySafair and its cabin crew will start a mediation process in a bid to resolve a wage negotiation impasse. Parties remain at odds after wage talks broke down, leading to a lockout of certain staff. The airline offered a 5.7% increase and 7.5% annual bonus, but the South African Cabin Crew Association rejected the deal. FlySafair says flights will continue with minimal disruption. Advocate Chris Shabangu is the president of the South African Cabin Crew Association.
We were supposed to do an inspection today, a picketing inspection today with SAFAIR. Well, unfortunately, that has been turned into a conciliation day, which means that we have a meeting now with SAFAIR at 10 o'clock to try and get to some kind of solution through a mediation, through a mediated meeting.
South African network provider Vodacom says it has reached an out-of-court settlement in the Please Call Me matter with Nkosana Makate. It says in a statement that the board approved a settlement agreement and that it has been accounted for in the group's interim results in the 6-month period ended on the 30th of September 2025, which are set to be released later this month. Tsepa Mungwai reports.
The company says as part of the settlement process, a notice was sent to the Supreme Court of Appeal withdrawing Vodacom's appeal. The figure agreed was not made public. The announcement ends the legal battle that has dragged on for about 17 years. Vodacom's share price ended firmer at 0.2%.
Despite global economic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions, African chief executive officers, CEOs, are showing renewed confidence in the continent's growth story. That's according to the KPMG 2025 Africa CEO Outlook Survey, which captures insights from 130 CEOs across Southern, East and West Africa. Lebohang Mabange reports.
The 2025 Africa CEO Outlook reveals that nearly 8 out of 10 African CEOs are optimistic about business growth, and almost all expect to expand their operations in the next 3 years. The survey forms part of the KPMG's Global CEO Outlook, now in its 11th year, and features perspectives from more than 1,300 CEOs across 11 regions worldwide.
Nigeria has launched the sale of $2.25 billion of euro bonds. The move comes after markets largely shrugged off threats from U.S. President Donald Trump of potential military action in the country. According to book runner Chapel Hill Denham, the oil-producing country will use the money to cover the government's fiscal deficit. On Sunday, Trump threatened military action in Nigeria if the country did not crack down on the killing of Christians. The following day, Nigeria's long-dated sovereign bond slipped, with the 2051 issue falling roughly 0.5 cents before retracing some of the losses. The U.S. Department of Transportation is set to begin cutting flights from Friday because of the continuing government shutdown. The Federal Aviation Administration says it will cut air traffic by 10% across 40 busy airports in order to maintain safety. Air traffic controllers have been working without pay for more than a month, and some are now calling in sick. The BBC's Peter Bowes says the government is trying to reassure travelers.
There is no indication right now that air travel in this country is not safe. That's what they're trying to avoid. In fact, the FAA has said that the system is still operating safely, but they are warning about these staffing problems and the fatigue pressures, especially amongst its staff, saying that as time goes on, this is now a record-breaking shutdown in terms of the number of days, and the problems are only going to get worse.
Financial indicators at this hour: $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,440 naira. In Botswana is 13 pula 35. Kenya, the dollar is 128 shilling 26. Zambia 22 kwacha 37. BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 38, and Russia 81 rubles 18. India 88 rupees 65. China 71 13. South Africa 17 rand 13 cents. Commodities: gold is trading at $3,988. Platinum at $1,557 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $63.70 a barrel. That is all. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Despite global economic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions, African chief executive officers, CEOs, are showing renewed confidence in the continent's growth story. That's according to the KPMG 2025 Africa CEO Outlook Survey, which captures insights from 130 CEOs across Southern, East and West Africa. Channel Africa's Lebogang Mabange reports.
The 2025 Africa CEO Outlook reveals that nearly 8 out of 10 African CEOs are optimistic about business growth and almost all expect to expand their operations in the next 3 years. The survey forms part of the KPMG's Global CEO Outlook, now in its 11th year, and features perspectives from more than 1,300 CEOs across 11 regions worldwide. Benson Ndungu, CEO and senior partner at KPMG East Africa, explains the background behind the survey.
This survey is anchored on the KPMG Global CEO Outlook Survey, which is in its 11th year. That survey covers about 1,300 plus CEOs from some of the largest corporate organizations in the world, from across 11 regions. And those regions include Africa. So I'm very proud that we have, in the second year in a row, been able to launch this as One Africa.
As global headwinds continue to shape the business environment, CEOs across the continent are demonstrating resilience in the face of uncertainty. Ndungu says navigating volatility has become a defining feature of African leadership.
Over the years, in leading through volatility, I think as CEOs, there is a clear demonstration of a resilience. The geopolitics space, in particular, over the last 12 months or so, has become increasingly volatile, and you'll have experienced it in your day-to-day. That links to the economic uncertainty that you see across the globe. So supply chain disruptions, whether it is trade, the impact has been immense.
A standout finding from the survey is Africa's bold approach to artificial intelligence. While the global average AI investment stands at 14% of corporate budgets, African CEOs are committing significantly more. Ignatius Sihule, CEO of KPMG South Africa, says the continent is determined not to be left behind in the AI revolution.
And one of the heartwarming things that I picked up in the survey is that in general, African CEOs are looking at spending at least 20% of their budgets on AI. The global norm is about 14%. We're spending a bit more. Now, that tells me that, one, I think this is the one particular race that we're not going to be left behind in. That tells me that Africa will not wake up one day and the whole world has disappeared into the distance as far as AI is concerned.
While optimism is strong, challenges remain. According to Gerald Kasimu, partner and head of advisory at KPMG Africa, CEOs are focused on tackling issues around technology integration, regulation, and cybersecurity.
In spite of the optimism, there are many challenges, but the top three that come through relate to integration of AI into organization processes and systems. Of course, regulatory pressures remain typical issues, as we have seen in previous years. And then lastly, integration of AI into workforce roles and responsibilities within the organization.
With 86% of CEOs eyeing mergers and acquisitions over the next 3 years, KPMG says Africa's leadership is betting on innovation and sustainable growth to drive the continent forward, turning global headwinds into opportunities for transformation. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
The latest State of Food and Agriculture 2025 report from the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization warns that 1.7 billion people are living in areas where human-induced land degradation is reducing crop yields and putting food security and rural livelihoods under threat. Now, the report highlights the main drivers, including unsustainable farming practices, deforestation, and overgrazing, and also points to solutions such as sustainable land management, crop rotation, and soil restoration. Well, joining us now to unpack these findings is Andrea Cataneo, who's a senior economist at the FAO and also the editor of the SOFA 2025 report. Andrea, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for the invitation. My pleasure.
Andrea, let's start with understanding what human-induced land degradation actually means. How does it show up actually on farms and or rural communities?
So let's start with the definition. It is basically about a decline in ecosystem services and functions provided by land. It can take different forms. One, as you mentioned, is kind of due to unsustainable farming practices, which may lead to soil erosion, in cases of kind of poorly done irrigation to salinization, but also nutrient depletion. Other forms of land degradation that are considered around the world are deforestation and also overgrazing, leading to kind of, in the end, reduced stocks that can be sustained on specific grazing lands. So that is kind of how these manifest themselves in terms of, especially in terms of, from a farmer perspective, a decrease in productivity. That's the main impact that we see. And some of this is human induced and some of it is not. And the complexity lies in how do you separate out what are human causes of land degradation so that we can take action and modify what we do.
Is this something that's been a growing problem, increasing year by year?
Well, yes. I mean, what we have seen is that, in fact, it is a bit of a universal challenge. In countries that have a long history of intensive kind of monoculture agriculture, these show the highest kind of per hectare production losses, right? And they're often masked with intensive use of inputs, but it comes at greater economic cost. We have also seen a productivity decline over time. So total factor productivity growth in agriculture, which has been very high in the 20th century, in the last 20 years has started decreasing. And the third kind of alarming aspect is the amount of agricultural land that is being abandoned in the world, which is approximately about 3.6 million hectares of cropland. And this is likely due to land degradation. So we're seeing that this is becoming a bit of a silent global challenge. And this is why the motivation behind this report and the findings that we have.
So the report points to Asia as the most affected region in absolute numbers. But turning to Africa, I'm wondering what the report says about land degradation trends across our continent and their implications for food security.
So let me start by saying that the report identifies some vulnerability hotspots. So I think that is one of the contributions. And these are where land degradation converges with poverty and child stunting. So sub-Saharan Africa has some of these hotspots. They're not only in sub-Saharan Africa. You see also kind of in northern India, but we see, for example, in Ethiopia, in Madagascar, some parts of Western Africa, and so that, in a sense, is let's say something to prioritize because it's the convergence of different types of problems. However, what is interesting for sub-Saharan Africa overall is that it shows, let's say, relatively low degradation-induced yield losses. And the reason is that the yield gaps that are occurring in Africa, which are among the highest, right? The yield gap between what is attainable according to an agroecological zone and what we see on the ground in terms of actual yields is not specifically due to human-induced land degradation. It's more about limited access to inputs, so to fertilizer, improved seeds, pesticides, times lack of mechanization, access to credit, access to markets, at times technologies that are not adopted to local needs. And so that is, I think, an interesting element of kind of the African challenge, that it's not primarily about reversing degradation, but about sustainable intensification to close these yield gaps while preventing future degradation. And so
one striking figure
yes.
that the report suggests is that reversing just 10% of human-induced land degradation on existing croplands could feed an additional 154 million people each year. What practical on-the-ground measures could we be deploying to turn things around?
Well, I mean, here there are two dimensions, really, right? I mean, one is about reversing advanced land degradation. And so those are usually activities that require kind of land use change. It's land that is no longer viable for agricultural production. And so one has to put in place really a restoration type of project. And then instead, I think where less costly is reducing land degradation on existing cropland, so land that has not reached that extreme level of degradation. And there, I think you can, there are many different kind of land management practices, right? It might be in some parts of the world, it's hedgerows to limit soil erosion. In other parts, it's kind of improved techniques of irrigation. And so in the context of the African experience, which is actually quite varied because you have farms of very different sizes throughout the continent. I mean, it's dominated by smallholders, less than 2 hectares, but there are also realities where there are medium-sized farms, and also for example, South Africa, there are also large farms. And so the type of action that is taken is different because the constraints that farmers face are different, right? And so for smallholders, it is mostly about how do you put in place practices that improve yields while not increasing land degradation. For farms that have more resources, it could be that there are bigger investments. Yield gaps may be smaller, but it's more about thinking about how not to degrade the land at this stage. And then there are, around the world, there are different types of programs to help farmers do that. I mean, the most direct way is just to say that certain activities cannot be done, like bans on deforestation, for example. But we see, for example, in medium income countries and higher income countries, more and more payments for ecosystem services, right? So that is a way of kind of subsidizing some of these land management practices. That's very common in Europe and in the United States. So that is, something where in kind of the African context might be, how do we improve yields by increasing inputs, increasing access to markets, but also thinking about sustainable land management practices.
Andrea, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very, very much indeed for giving us the highlights of the SOFA 2025 report. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
That's Andrea Cataneo, who's a senior economist and editor of the SOFA 2025 report, talking about some key findings there, particularly around land degradation and food security.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
8 o'clock Central African time. Good morning to you if you've just joined us. Of course, we are Channel Africa and we come to you live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. The show is called Rise and Shine. My name is Asanda Beda. You connect with us via our live streaming platform at Channel Africa 1. That's on YouTube. Also on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as the SABC Plus app. Good morning, partner.
A very good morning to you.
And we go to South African matters in this hour as we are broadcasting live from the country, talking of the Parliament's ad hoc committee that's looking into security matters nationally, as well as the Madlanga Commission, which are continuing parallel.
Yeah, there's also another interesting story that I'm fascinated by, and that's a cost of living report that's being looked at. The Competition Commission in South Africa released its first cost of living report, revealing that households in the country are facing mounting financial strain. And I guess we didn't need a report to really understand, because we feel it every single day, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be unpacking exactly what's behind that a little bit later on this hour. But first, let's catch you up with the day's news with Onele Nsinsi and your sports headlines with Musabudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The African Union's observer mission has reported that Tanzania's elections did not comply with the democratic standards of the disputed October 29 vote. President Samia Suluhu Hassan was declared the landslide winner of the vote that triggered deadly protests, but opponents accused the government of fraud. There has also been protests over the exclusion of her main challengers. Hassan, who was sworn in back into office on Monday after being credited with 98% of the vote, acknowledged people died, but her government has also called the opposition toll hugely exaggerated. The mission concludes that the 2025 Tanzania general elections did not comply with AU principles, normative frameworks, and other international obligations and standards for democratic elections. A new report says Sudan's network of community kitchen is on the verge of collapse. The charity Islamic Relief Worldwide says neglect, shortages and volunteer exhaustion means most kitchens are facing closure. BBC's Richard Kago.
Community kitchens have been a lifeline for millions across Sudan. In El Fasher, recently captured by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, they were the only source of food for many families during an 18-month siege that cut off international aid. Islamic Relief warns that the collapse of this vital safety net would be catastrophic. A volunteer in Khartoum says 11 kitchens have shut this year, while others have severely cut portions, now serving 1 meal a day instead of 3. A UN-backed hunger report says famine conditions are now emerging in 2 more areas, including El Fasher and Kadugli in South Kordofan state, both cut off by conflict.
A new witness will take to the stand at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry in South Africa this morning. This comes after Crime Intelligence Head General Dumisani Khumalo concluded his testimony on the disbandment of the Political Killings Task Team. The PKTT was disbanded in December 2024 by Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, who has been placed on special leave, Sibahle Mota reports.
After a long day at the Madlanga Commission, the man who has helped solve some of the country's top political killings investigations concluded his testimony on Wednesday. General Dumisani Khumalo, the project leader for the PKTT, testified extensively about its disbandment. The intelligence head told the commission that he found out about the PKTT's disbandment on social media. His testimony corroborates that of KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. The PKTT is at the heart of the Madlanga Commission, which is looking into allegations of political interference in law enforcement agencies.
South Africa's government says that it has received distressed calls from 17 citizens who had joined mercenary forces in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The men are between the ages of 20 and 39 and are trapped in Ukraine's war-torn Donbas region. In a statement, the South African government says President Cyril Ramaphosa has ordered an investigation into the circumstances that led to the recruitment of these young men into these seemingly mercenary activities. And lastly, Namibia says it's intensifying its push to host the African Regional Hub of the Green Climate Fund as the UN Climate Change Conference gets underway in Belém in Brazil today. President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has confirmed that Namibia has already submitted its bid.
If you look to the Environmental Management Fund, it has really benefited from the Green Climate Fund, and we still want to benefit more. Because we really have areas, particularly Kunene, that is most hit by the climate change. So going to this conference, we are trying to see how we can benefit ourselves. Another thing is the question of water, which is a challenge. And the climate change and water are discussed together. So that is why Namibia is part of the global water program, partnership program.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, South Africa's sports minister gives an update on the VAR, and Elena Rybakina completes a clean sweep in the WTA finals group. Details of these and other stories coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
A controversy has emerged in South Africa's ongoing inquiry into alleged corruption within the country's police and intelligence services. The Madlanga Commission heard testimony about the appointment of Dineo Mukwele, a former BMW employee with no policing background, to the rank of brigadier in the elite crime intelligence division. Now, during the hearings, General Dumisani Khumalo, who's the head of crime intelligence, defended the appointment, saying that Mukwele was the most suitable candidate for their covert operations. The Commission is examining whether her appointment and others like it form part of a wider pattern of questionable practices within the South African security sector. Sibat Lemuta has more.
Dineo Mukwele's appointment as a brigadier in crime intelligence landed General Khumalo in hot water. General Khumalo, Mukwele, and 5 others are currently before court on numerous charges. This includes the manipulation of recruitment processes, which led to her landing the top brigadier job. However, General Khumalo told the commission that Mukwele was the most qualified candidate for the position. He further testified that charges brought against him and others are politically motivated as a result of their work in the PKTT.
It's a person, firstly, who's qualified in mechatronics, a person who can combine both mechanical engineering and electronical engineering to suit our covert activities needs. So those people are normally found then in these environments.
The disbandment of the PKTT was also brought to the fore during Wednesday's proceedings. This was the first time since beginning his testimony that General Khumalo would speak about the PKTT's dissolution.
I had never been given an opportunity to brief the ministry. I've never received any complaints or signs of unhappiness. Was never consulted when the letter then was drafted and finalized. It came as a surprise even to myself.
The commission also heard how Deputy National Police Commissioner General Shadrack Sibiya insisted on a close-out report of the PKTT's disbandment. General Khumalo testified that Sibiya did this on a number of occasions, including a few days after the PKTT was dissolved.
When the letter of the 17th came, confusing and contradicting itself as it is, but I did not consider complying with it because I had this other plan and the arrangement and the instructions from a more senior officer.
Short, is it correct, would it be correct to characterize it this way? General Sibia went and did his own thing when he sent you this directive. He didn't have the approval of the National Commissioner.
That's correct.
A new witness will take to the stand on Thursday and will testify in public. I am Sibahle Mota in Pretoria.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's acting police minister, Professor Firoz Kashalia, says it is clear that the supply chain management in the police force needs reform. Kashalia is appearing before Parliament's ad hoc committee looking into matters of national security. The committee was established after the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's allegations of criminal infiltration, corruption and political interference in the justice system. Zaylene Merrington reports.
Professor Kashalia took over the police ministry in August. He addressed various issues when he appeared before the ad hoc committee. Among others, the reforms he thinks are necessary in SAPS.
In the portfolio committee, when the annual report was presented, it was clear that this is a matter that needs attention. The Auditor General was asked to give the portfolio committee further information on the specific contracts where they found irregularities, and I will be following that up because I'm also interested in that information. So one of the areas certainly that I hope this committee will come to a conclusion on is on the question, first of all, that there can't be any doubt that the issue of supply chain in SAPS needs serious attention.
And the issue of restoring credibility among the senior management levels.
SAPS needs an integrity management system. We need some advice on that. Lifestyle audits. We have to look at procurement reform. I think the way SAPS handles discipline within the organization needs to be looked at.
Asked for his opinion on how to effectively fight organized crime, this was Kachalia's answer.
We're not going to win the battle against organized crime if we don't tackle the problems in crime intelligence, which are about accountability, but also about capability. Why is it these problems in crime intelligence have emerged in all these reports and oversight documents, processes that I've talked, but it's over a period of time it's become worse. We haven't been able to use the system to self-correct.
Well, as we know that the acting police minister of South Africa, Professor Firoz Kashalia, is appearing before Parliament's ad hoc committee looking into matters of national security. We now are joined to unpack this in terms of what was said by the Professor Kashalia so far by political analyst Professor Sipho Siepe. Professor Siepe, good morning to you, and thank you for making time.
Good morning. Good morning, and thank you for inviting me.
Our pleasure. So, Acting Police Minister Firoz Kashalia, in his appearance before Parliament's ad hoc committee, talked about the need for a clear, coordinated strategy to fight organized crime in the country, in South Africa. What will it take to have this in place under his leadership, as you see it?
Well, the issue of coordinated and integrated, those are nice words. They appear in almost every document in government. Every department will make the same claim. But the reality on the ground is something else. We should be very clear that we're not running short of systems in government. We're not running short of policies in government. We're not running short of procedures. What we are running short of is the leadership of integrity that is ethical, that would be able to address some of the challenges that we face. And so that is where the challenge we face. And what we also saw with the minister is a certain form of evasiveness there were clear questions that were asked of the minister, and from the get-go. One was his statement on the press briefing or press conference that was held on the 6th of July by Mkonasi. So that was the first thing, and his response was to suggest that that press conference was inappropriate. And effectively, that is a failure to understand the gravity that led gravity of concerns that led Mkonasi to have that press conference. Effectively, you saw the minister trying to almost find fault with the Lieutenant General Mkonasi in terms of hosting and that press conference. Yet that press conference has revealed so much. So you would have thought that the minister, given the advantage of having listened to the testimonies, would have said what the former president Mbeki said, that Mkonasi has done this country a favor. So that was one position that was unfortunate by the acting minister. But we must also understand it that in doing so, he was also trying to shield his own comrade, the minister that he says was his predecessor. Already, even the language of saying my predecessor almost suggests an acting minister who sees himself almost as if the other minister is gone. Then the second issue that he was asked was about the letter, whether the letter that was written by Mr. Mkunu was appropriate and within the rules of engagement in terms of a minister versus the national commissioner, in terms of issues of whether the minister had overstepped or has overreached or has gone into the operational space which he was not supposed to. Even at that moment, he began to be very evasive. But coming up with a notion of the complexity of the moment, the complexity of the situation, whereas the question was very simple, and this question had been ventilated in a number of fora, both in the media as well as in the other committee and also in the commission, to say, did the minister overstep his boundaries? And he should have been very clear instead of coming up with a lot of convoluted statements that evades the question. And then the other question that was raised was whether the manner in which the letter was written was, and the context was proper. After being evasive, he then came down to the notion that they've been handled better. But of course, everybody knows that any matter could always have been handled better. So he was not saying anything, but he did accept the most obvious, to say there should have been consultation with the ministers who formed what you call the interministerial committee, and consultation with also the people who are in the operational space, people like General Masemola, including Lieutenant General Mkonasi. So he considered that aspect. But the point is, you also saw the minister trying by all means to say, I must offend less people. I must make sure that I don't offend his predecessor, as he put it, and he must also not offend the people who are in operational space. But at the same time, he found himself forced to agree with the position that was taken by General Kelly, to say the decision to establish the PKTT was made by the president, and almost suggesting that the president should have been consulted in this matter. But we also know that later, Mr. Mkunu almost gave or intimated that he did brief the president around the matter of the disestablishment of the PKTT, which also raised also a number of questions, because Masemola himself had indicated that the president had been routinely happy with the work that is done by the PKTT.
How can, if we talk general terms now, the police ministry ensure that the establishment or the established Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, or the IDAC, becomes fully capable of fulfilling its mandate. We heard Professor Firoz Kashalia, as far as reforms are concerned, saying that the supply chain management in the police force needs reform. What else needs reform?
Well, I'm not too sure what reform he has. What he needs to do is to move from this speculative and hypothetical situation. He needs to say these are the processes and procedures that are in place, or the standard operating procedures, and he needs to point out what are the weaknesses, so that when you talk about reform, you become specific. So he cleverly or cunningly spoke in generalities, and they were not in the position to be able to find what has broken in the supply chain. What we know is that in most instances, it is not the absence of procedures. It is when you have the wrong people, when you have people who are greedy, when you have people who are corrupt, when you have people who are unethical in positions, that you have even the best systems collapsing and failing. So for now, it is a waste of time to talk about these broad statements, unless he can say, I've looked at these standard operating procedures in the police in terms of supply chain, and this is what is broken. But simply to say, oh, there's need for reform, how many times have we spoken about the need for reform, and people are not able to point out exactly that which need to be reformed? So I find that most of this being an infinite deal of nothing, until such time people become very specific about what is broken. Then we can talk about what needs to be fixed. But what we do know now is that once you have wrong people in places, once you have people who can easily be influenced, where money comes and plays a role, then systems collapse. And what we've seen with the failures has had more to do with individuals than it has to do with systems.
Evidence leader advocate Norman Arendse said that Kashalia has been thrown into the deep end of a volatile political crisis. Do you agree?
Oh, no, definitely. I mean, we need to take the press conference by Mkonazi very seriously. First, he has alluded to the fact of infiltration of the police, where the police are at the beck and call of drug cartels and crime syndicates. And he is able to adduce instances where the people who are working with the police are themselves implicated in acts of criminality. That has emerged. So when you are getting into that space, and a space that is fractional, and a space where the police are almost incriminating others or implicating others in acts of criminality, where you have the weaponization of the police against their own members, and also where you have the politicians also having an interest, and where you have crime syndicates who are seen to be funding politicians who have political ambitions, then surely you are actually coming into the deep end. And also when those people who are implicated are your comrades, and when you ask questions, you are also evasive, then you actually have a serious problem. So I think Kashalia himself has to be very clear whether he's going to play or become expedient in his responses instead of answering clearly direct questions that are given to him.
Let's touch on the Madlanga Commission as well and the proceedings that took place yesterday. The appointment of a car manufacturer BMW employee by the name of Dineo Mukwele to the South African Crime Intelligence Division was raised. She has no police police service experience, and Crime Intelligence Head General Dumisani Khumalo was given an opportunity to defend this appointment. Were you convinced of his answers? What's your take?
Well, I mean, there are issues that Mkonasi actually raised even around that issue. First, you have to ask the whether this is a matter of criminality or whether it's a matter of failure to follow due process in terms of the HR policy of the police, and also whether the person is being appointed to deal with the issues of policing. So I'm not at the moment convinced that the argument that has been raised or the defense by Kumalo, but the issue is this person being appointed to deal with the policy matter or dealing with other things? Because it could be, I mean, the question that you need to ask is that, are we saying only people with the police experience should be in the police force? If you bring a chartered accountant to deal with issues of money in the police, would you say the person is inappropriate? Those are the issues that Mkwanas was also trying to raise. And I'm not too sure that Kumalo has responded in a manner that will convince many people. But to criminalize that is what Mkonazi was also trying to say. Let us be very careful about having to deal with HR issues. That should be dealt with there where you can actually say the matter was not procedural and the person should not have been appointed. Or as opposed to saying the non-adherence to HR should be dealt with at the level of HR, whether this should be actually be seen as a matter of criminality. Because once we do that, we are now shifting away from what appears to have been the weaponization or the abuse by some people of the SAPC to say we're going to charge people because we do not like those people. So, but I do think that the whole matter should be handled in such a way that we look at also the bigger picture rather than an individual, because what we have here is a police force that is at war with itself.
We are aware that whistleblower and councillor assassinations were taking place, particularly around the time that the PKTT, or the Political Killing Task Team, was disbanded. There were increases there. Are political killings likely to worsen in South Africa as we head to elections next year? And what more attention to the disbandment of the PKTT would this place?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that given the level of poverty in this country, and given that when people get into positions, political positions, they are not getting in there from the perspective of saving. They're also seeing this as a form of income. Once we have that scenario, we have seen that people end up fighting and almost for those mega resources, and they tend to take on each other, and they tend to get into finding other ways, including killing others, to make sure that they do not stand a chance of being competitors in that space. So until we understand that, but also for as long as money plays a role in the situation where people get into senior positions, then you can expect that you will have an element of crime. So there is no doubt that as we go towards a local government elections, the tensions within parties and between parties are going to increase. And the establishment of the Political Killings Task Team was meant to try to minimize that. And even its approach was to make sure that people are not, the people are discouraged from continuing with these political assassinations, to understanding that the law will take its course and the law has firmed its capabilities. So I don't think both the minister, I don't think the politicians and leaders of political parties are oblivious of the fact that South Africa is already a crime scene, and there are too many players and most of them are political. So the factions that we see in the police force are simply an outcome of factions or a consequence of factions in the political space. So I do not see that as we move towards elections, we're going to have a smooth process where there will be less killings. What we can do is to find ways in which there could be a robust mechanism to prevent more mayhem in our political space.
Professor Siepe, we thank you so much again for your time, and your insights are always valuable to us. We appreciate them.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Professor Sipho Siepe is a political analyst giving us his insights and analysis of the ad hoc committee and the proceedings there that happened. Our acting police commissioner, Firoz Kashalia, having appeared yesterday, and he continues with his testimonies there. And on the other hand, the Madlanga Commission and the proceedings there from yesterday. One that continues and will keep you updated. 8:30 Central African Time. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Sudan's joint force of armed movements has rejected any political settlement that treats the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, as an equal actor to the state. The African Union's Observer Mission has reported that Tanzania's elections did not comply with the democratic standards of the disputed October 29 elections. The mission has concluded that the 2025 Tanzania general elections did not comply with AU principles, normative frameworks and other international obligations and standards for democratic elections. And Amnesty International has accused Tunisia of carrying out widespread human rights violations against migrants, including rape and torture. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, let's catch you up with the day's sport. And at the sports desk is Musibudi Rachel Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning once again from the Sports Desk. So South Africa's Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie, has confirmed that an experienced project team will assist with the long-awaited introduction of the video assistant referee. That is, of course, the VAR system in South Africa, and is already at work. So addressing the media during a long overdue information sharing session in the country's capital city, Pretoria, yesterday, McKenzie revealed that the initiative is being spearheaded by a team of former top international referees led by Daniel Bennett, who now heads the newly established VAR project team. So with North African leagues such as Morocco's Botala Pro League, Algeria's League One, as well as Egypt's Premier League already utilizing VAR, McKenzie says South Africa, South Africa, which is home to one of the continent's most competitive domestic leagues, cannot afford to lag behind. Well, Manchester City moved into the top 8 of the Champions League phase with a comprehensive 4-1 victory over German side Borussia Dortmund. Now, City boss Pep Guardiola described the game against Dortmund as massive in a race for qualification to the knockout phases, as they look now to avoid having an extra game in the playoff round by securing a top 8 finish. So just last season, the playoff round was where the competition ended at the hands of Real Madrid, but City now look on course to avoid that this season after Phil Foden's double, Erling Haaland's 18th goal of the season, as well as substitute Ryan Cherki's late goal, condemned Dortmund to just their second defeat of the season. We'll stay with football news. AC Milan as well as Inter Milan have finalized the purchase of the San Siro Stadium and confirmed plans now to demolish and replace it with a 71,000 capacity arena. The demolition of San Siro, widely regarded as one of the world's most prestigious football stadiums, has been mooted for years as its condition has deteriorated over time. Now, the two clubs, who have now shared the stadium since 1947, have paid $172 million to the city council to take control of the structure as well as the surrounding land, which they say is a sign of shared ambition for long-term success. Now, the new stadium will have a capacity of roughly 4,000 fewer seats than the current San Siro and will be designed by firms operated by Sir Norman Foster as well as David Manica, who played crucial roles in the planning of the new Wembley Stadium. On to cricket news now. Legendary South Africa's Proteas woman all-rounder Marizanne Kapp has admitted to being bitterly disappointed at not returning home with the World Cup trophy despite having played the best tournament of her life. The team landed at the OR Tambo International Airport on Tuesday from India, where they had lost in the tournament final to the host side just 48 hours prior. Now, Kapp has posted a 5 for 5 in the semi-final against England, which made her the ICC's Women's World Cup all-time leading wicket taker with about 44 scalps to her name. She says she thought her time had come after that performance.
Yeah, definitely. I just felt like everything fell into place. Like you said, we had a wonderful semi-final. But that's cricket, moved to a different ground, which is a lot flatter, not much in it for us as bowlers. So it almost like took you out of the game a little bit. So we knew it was going to come down to whoever probably bats the best on the day. But no, again, just disappointed. Like you said, I feel like there was so many things that fell into place. I mean, that semi-final we played against England, just very disappointed.
And finally, in tennis news, Elena Rybakina completed a clean sweep of her group at the WTA finals with a straightforward victory over late call-up Ekaterina Alexandrova. Now, the sixth seed who sealed her progression to the semi-finals on Monday continued her momentum with a 6-4, 6-1 win in Riyadh. The Kazakhstan player had been due to play Madison Keys, but the American could not advance and had to withdraw about just hours before that match because of an illness. Alexandrova was the second alternate but received the nod after fellow Russian as well as first option Mira Andreeva, who is also competing in the doubles in Riyadh, declared herself not fit to play in the singles competition. Well, it's a wrap of your sports news this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
A atenção do mundo está em Joanesburgo. Líderes das maiores economias do planeta reúnem-se para tomar decisões que irão moldar o futuro das nações e dos mercados. O Channel África está no centro dos acontecimentos a trazer-lhe as conversas, análises e perspectivas que realmente importam. A cimeira do G20 nos dias 22 e 23 de novembro, sob uma perspectiva africana em tempo real. Acompanhe tudo no Channel Africa.
So what's happening in the world of business? We're about to find out because Chanduko Likeke is going to let us know. Good morning, sir.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Asanda, and thank you. Kenya's telecoms company Safaricom has reported group earnings before interest and taxes of $505.62 million in the first half of its financial year, up 54.5% from the same period earlier. Its Kenya business continued to be the main profit driver, while losses in key expansion market Ethiopia fell. It launched in Ethiopia in 2022 as the government there opened up the tightly controlled economy to foreign competition. Safaricom is partly owned by South Africa's Vodacom and Britain's Vodafone. Meanwhile, South African network provider Vodacom says it has reached an out-of-court settlement in the Please Call Me matter with Nkosana Makate. It says in a statement that the board approved a settlement agreement and that it has been accounted for in the group's interim results for the 6-month period ended 30 September 2025, which are set to be released later this month. Tsepa Mungwai reports.
The company says as part of the settlement process, a notice was sent to the Supreme Court of Appeal withdrawing Vodacom's appeal. The figure agreed was not made public. The announcement ends the legal battle that has dragged on for about 17 years. Vodacom's share price ended firmer at 0.2%.
Budget airline Flysafair and its cabin crew will start a mediation process in a bid to resolve a wage negotiation impasse. Parties remain at odds after wage talks broke down, leading to a lockout of certain staff. The airline offered a 5.7% increase and 7.5% annual bonus, but the South African Cabin Crew Association rejected the deal. Flysafair says flights will continue with minimal disruption. Advocate Chris Shabango is the president of the South African Cabin Crew Association.
We were supposed to do an inspection today, a picketing inspection today with SAFAIR. Well, unfortunately, that has been turned into a conciliation day, which means that we have a meeting now with SAFAIR at 10 o'clock to try and get to some kind of solution through a mediation, through a CCMA mediated meeting.
Despite global economic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions, African chief executive officers are showing renewed confidence in the continent's growth story. That's according to KPMG 2025 Africa CEO Outlook Survey, which captures insights from 130 CEOs across Southern, East and West Africa. Lebohang Mabange reports.
The 2025 Africa CEO Outlook reveals that nearly 8 out of 10 African CEOs are optimistic about business growth, and almost all expect to expand their operations in the next 3 years. The survey forms part of the KPMG's Global CEO Outlook, now in its 11th year, and features perspectives from more than 1,300 CEOs across 11 regions worldwide.
Volvo Cars says it is targeting a long-term operating profit margin of over 8% as part of a strategy overhaul to enable a strong positive cash flows and growth through electrification. Earlier in the year, former CEO Hakan Samuelson was brought back for 2 years to help revive a record low share price, quickly launching a cost-cutting program. This included pulling the group's then outlook, such as on delivering a core EBIT margin of 7 to 8% and generating a strong positive free cash flow in 2026. Now let's have a look at financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,440 naira. In Botswana, 13 pula 35, Kenya 128 shilling 26, Zambia 22 kwacha 37. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 38, in Russia 81 rubles 18, India 88 rupees 65, China 71 13, South Africa 17 rand 13 cents. Commodities, gold is at $3,988, platinum at $1,568 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $63.77 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
His Majesty's Trade Commissioner for Africa, John Humphrey, has emphasized the crucial role of small and medium-sized enterprises in driving economic growth and innovation across the UK and South Africa. Speaking to Channel Africa at the UK-South Africa SMME Forum at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in Sandton on Tuesday, Humphrey highlighted the need for stronger partnerships between the two countries to support business growth, digital transformation and skills development. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe spoke with His Majesty's Trade Commissioner for Africa, John Humphrey.
So today's gathering is really important because it's actually talking about small and medium-sized enterprises, the sort of lifeblood, if you like, of any economy, definitely in the UK and definitely here in South Africa as well. And I think as governments, we need to do more to encourage those businesses to start up, to grow, to thrive. And then, of course, between the UK and South Africa, there's a long-standing trading partnership, and it makes sense for those companies both in the UK to look at South Africa as a market to expand into, and also South African businesses to expand into the UK as well. So that's really what this forum is about. It's about making those connections, bridging those gaps, and bringing, investors and businesses and people together.
This is also linked to technology, the AI. How is the UK doing in terms of linking the SMMEs with the new technologies that we see rapidly, growing day by day?
Well, actually, one of the speakers today was from Vodacom, and he was very much talking about the sort of digital infrastructure and how that enables businesses to have access to things that they would never have had. And of course, Vodacom represents that partnership between the UK and South Africa, very explicitly in the digital space. And I think there's if you like, the beauty of the digital markets is they're global. They're potentially global. You can have an innovation here in South Africa, you can have an innovation in the UK, and they can become global phenomena. And I think the UK is one of the strongest tech startup hubs globally. It has a very thriving ecosystem and really leading researchers in areas like artificial intelligence and other areas as well. Of course, we weren't just talking about digital and that sort of tech innovation. We're also talking about the creative industries as well. And I think the UK has a very well-established, well-known reputation in the creative industries. And actually, South Africa does as well. So I think there's a natural synergy between the two markets.
Africa has a young population, and you cracked big numbers there that the UK is investing into technologies in terms of skills and development. With Africa, where does that potential lie? What should we do to ensure that we achieve that goal of competing at the highest level in terms of new technologies?
Yeah, so I think, if you look ahead to 2050, I think something like 25% of the world's working age population is going to be in Africa. And I think the average age across Africa now is about 19 years old or thereabouts. And if you think about it, you walk around the streets, I think that younger generation are tech savvy, digitally enabled. And I think really for all of us as governments, our job in a way is to create that framework which enables them to thrive and to prosper and to innovate. And I think that's true in the UK, where, if you like, we've got a population that's got a different demographic trend. But I think here in an African context presents an opportunity to create jobs, to create wealth, with a global market in mind.
For this to happen, of course, it will also require economic and also technological diplomacy, which will also require collaboration and also cooperation. How important is that countries like the UK that are leading in terms of tech collaborate well with the countries in Africa so that we are on par?
No, I think actually you've touched on something that's actually vitally important. So if you think about what it means to have a digital business. Often you're moving data, maybe that data is about people, actually creating that sort of regulatory framework which makes everybody feel confident that they can do trade, knowing that intellectual property will be respected, knowing that personal data will be respected. I think that's vital actually for all of us collectively, because it's that sort of level playing field. It's that, I suppose, alignment of standards which really creates that bigger market space that people can address. So I think, as governments, I think this is one of our key focuses must be to create that sort of playing field, if you like, that opens up markets for people. And I think that's where regulation and things like that and collaboration is vitally important. And I think, the UK, is doing a lot in that space. And, I think South Africa in particular has quite a well-developed environment from that perspective as well. But there's clearly more that we can do.
Listen in on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Right, let's take a look at this story now. South Africa's Competition Commission has released its first ever cost of living report, and the findings paint a worrying picture. The report shows that the price of essentials such as electricity, water and healthcare, education, housing, internet and transport has been rising faster than inflation, putting households under severe financial strain. Lower income families are feeling the pressure. Most as administered prices, interest rates, and essential services costs continue to climb. Now, the publication raises major questions about pricing, transparency, and whether consumers are getting a fair deal from service providers. Well, to help us unpack the implications, we're now joined on the line by, let's take a look. We have, who's our guest? It's Lebohang Mobadikane, who's the Director of Competition Law at Cliff Decker Hofmeyr. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for having me.
What would you say are the key takeaways of the Competition Commission's first cost of living report?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, I think the report sort of paints a bit of a somewhat sad and alarming, picture regarding the cost of living in South Africa. What the report basically says is that the cost of living in South Africa has gotten quite high over the last 5-year period. And specifically, I mean, if you look at the cost of essential goods and services such as electricity and water, those costs have gone up by 50% and in some instances by around 65%. And that essentially that type of rise in pricing has got a very negative impact on low-income households because they're now under more pressure to spend more on goods that they essentially can't do without. And I think all of this is happening in the backdrop of an economy that is sluggish in South Africa, as well as a high unemployment rate. So what the Competition Commission, in my view, deems as low-income households could potentially even be no-income households, Peter.
So, I mean, it's great to come out with reports like this, but what can they do to help us actually in the end?
So, I mean, it depends with, with which lens you're looking at this. So if you're asking specifically what can the competition do with these types of findings, the Competition Act empowers the Commission to do a whole lot of things in terms of just intervening where there could very well be anti-competitive behavior in any market in South Africa. So using this example, the Competition Commission, I think, is basically laying the foundation for taking a closer look at the competition practices in markets which provide these essential goods and services, including the food market, for example. And you would have seen earlier this year, I think it was in January this year, that the Commission published its final report in the food produce market, where the Commission basically did a market inquiry. A market inquiry, Peter, in terms is established in terms of the Competition Act, and it is essentially an inquiry as to the state of competition in a market broadly, without necessarily investigating the conduct of a specific firm. But having done that market-wide investigation, then the Commission is empowered to make findings against specific firms in that market and make recommendations which could potentially then be implemented by those firms. So if the Commission then has these findings and that prices in a market look a bit high, and they establish a link between those prices and anti-competitive practices in that market, then the Commission is able to potentially prosecute the entities that are responsible for that anti-competitive conduct in a particular market.
So that's the competitive space, but I guess the administered prices, the state and other regulators can also be guided because probably they're functioning in isolation, looking at their particular areas. But when you put it all together, government can have a role to play to help people's cost of living.
That's actually quite true. Again, linking back to the Commission's work, I mean, I must commend the Competition Commission. They've done really great work. If you go back to the same fresh produce market inquiry that I referred to, the one that's got a report that was published in January this year, What the commission actually finds is that when it comes to fresh produce, so they were looking at those fruit and veggie markets, right, which are some of them are actually run by municipalities. And one of the findings that the commission makes is that there are inefficiencies in the running of these markets, which render it difficult for small businesses and or rather for small business run type of farming entities, as well as historically disadvantaged farmers, to be able to participate in those markets, right? And the reason why that's important is because those efficiencies, so says the commission, are as a result of certain municipal inabilities or inefficiencies that come from some of the legislative framework that the municipalities are working within in order to establish these markets. So the reason why I think this is an important finding made by the Competition Commission in this context is that it goes to show that even though the commission does its work, and even though the commission maybe in some instances in fact finds that there's anti-competitive conduct by entities that are involved in those markets, the reality is that where government is able to create an environment for competition through legislation or certain other interventions, the government should do so, because once the government has done so, then the Competition Commission is able to then police the conduct of firms in those industries much better, knowing that all regulatory and other governmental types of impediments have been removed, which may hinder competition, and therefore the focus would be solely on the behavior of the firms in those markets.
Lebohang, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, but thank you so much indeed for unpacking this cost of living report for us, which I guess we didn't need to know the details. We live it every single day. But thanks so much indeed for the highlights and the big picture.
No, thank you very much, Peter. Thanks.
That's Lebohang Mabi Dikane, who's the director in the competition law practice at Cliff Decker Hofmeyr, speaking to us about this Competition Commission's cost of living report. Asanda, it's Thursday. And every Thursday, what happens?
We have podcasts.
Yes, we do. And this week, focus on Cameroon. I speak to a political analyst who essentially, and one of the key questions that I asked him was, has Paul Biya faced his toughest test in getting over this election hurdle, and he's got a clear way? And he says to me that it was a tough test, but he does suspect that there could be tougher tests to come, especially when it comes to the municipal elections, parliamentary elections that are going to follow. So we'll have to wait and see, but find out a little bit later on as we upload this week's episode of the Channel Africa Conversations podcast.
And also on this Thursday is On the Move, coming up after Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa. Benjamin joins us now to tell us what we can expect. How are you?
Hey, how are you guys?
Good, thank you. You shaved your hair?
I did, long time ago.
Was it like this yesterday?
Grown. Yes, it was like this yesterday.
Oh, you were wearing a hat yesterday. I didn't see it.
Hello, Brother Benjamin.
Hey, how's it going?
No, for me, Paul Biya, he has just I think he has survived the first toughest test. I think the next toughest test is going to be the legislative elections, because of course that's what many are waiting for. Then the next equally as well is because many young Cameroonians and many Cameroonians, quite honestly, feel that this is a mandate of transition. Many do not feel that this is a mandate which might particularly go towards the end of the mandate. Many understand that this is a mandate of transition. Even Issa Chiroma Bakari was talking of more of a refoundation of the values of Cameroon. So when we see the elections, many in Cameroon feel that this is this is a mandate of transition. I don't think Paul Biya has faced his toughest test. I think his toughest test is yet to come, because going into the legislative elections next year, we are yet to see a lot of contestations from the different political parties. And mind you, Maurice Kamto's political party that did not participate in the presidential election is going to be eligible to participate in the legislative elections as well this coming March in 2016. So, in my opinion, the toughest test is yet to come as well.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
So that's the podcast a little bit later on.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds very nice. I'm gonna check it out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. What's coming on the show today is that we're gonna be looking at nannies, right?
Nannies. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I think nannies are something very interesting because at times we kind of take advantage of nannies. Nannies don't end up
All
just
right.
looking
we
after
just
our
have
kids.
to be clear because across the continent, nannies is a different word.
Yeah.
To what we use it in South Africa.
What is it?
Across the continent, we say maid, and even servant is the word used there. So
Yes,
to
of
be
course,
clear.
yes.
And
Yeah.
domestic work is that South
Domestic
Africa?
worker as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about, and we're going to be talking about how we break the barriers of kind of like, nanny ends up doing stuff that is household stuff.
Yes.
And I think that's abuse to a large extent because
also-
sometimes we don't pay for the peripheral stuff that
The
they
roles
actually do.
definitely have to be
Yeah.
clarified from the onset.
Yeah.
And sometimes they
Yeah.
work long hours, hey, just
Mhm.
because they're in the vicinity of the house. But I want to know also, when they finish your food, does that come back into your into the pay?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, so lots of points to cover there.
It's 9:00. We're out of here.
Goodbye, everyone. 6 till 9 tomorrow. We'll be back with you. I'm Asanda, Beda, and Peter Ndoro.